easier it is to sell souls.
There is a new price on freedom, so buy into it while supplies last. Changes need to be made. No more curbside baggage. 7 p.m. curfew. Racial profiling will continue with less bitching. We've unified over who to kill, so until I find more relevant scripture to quote, remember, our God is bigger, stronger, smarter, and much wealthier. So wave those flags with pride, especially the white part.
We're selling addictive 24-hour candlelight vigils in TVs. Freedom will be defended at the cost of civil liberties. The viewers are glued to television screens, stuck, cause lots of things seem too sick. I use opportunities to pluck heartstrings for theme music. I show you which culture to pump.
All right, welcome to the Grift. I am Rev and Gonz.
I am Gonzo.
It has been a week, as always.
We should just have that put on fucking business cards at this point. It's getting really...
Yep. Every week is a new, fresh set of nightmares, a hellscape from which we cannot escape. But hey, I got a new haircut.
That's nice. It looks sharp. Looks
Yeah.
sharp. I got people on the TikTok constantly yelling at me to cut my hair, and no.
You look like a lady.
No, it's like I do find there's a beautiful irony in people who talk about how much they love Jesus telling me I need to shave and cut my hair.
Oh yeah, no.
Like
The man didn't.
You know, I was darker than me.
Yep.
I'm paler than him, but
He was probably as hairy as you are.
probably. I
More
mean,
than likely,
he was a
yeah.
Semitic person.
He was a very Semitic person.
They are a hirsute people.
And it was a particularly at a time period where shaving and cutting one's hair was not socially acceptable.
No, it was like in a lot of
Especially not for a
instances,
rabbi?
Religiously prohibited.
Yes, particularly not for a rabbi.
See,
It would
here's
not have been
something that Christians forget. The guy we call Jesus Christ, a Jew.
Yeah, named Yeshua.
He was a Jew.
He was a Jew
Our
from
boy Josh.
from Palestine.
Yeah. Inconvenient truths, which you people struggle with.
Yeah, and
Not gonna lie.
he would have been genetically identical to the Palestinians of today. Really.
Well, pretty much.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. So.
I don't know what to tell you. That's how it works.
Like, did you know, like, the Lebanese in particular have, like, the most, like, direct Canaanite descent?
Neat. My my half sister's half Lebanese.
Nice.
Her
Yeah,
mom
so
was Lebanese.
The Lebanese in particular, like, have the most Canaanite DNA.
That's pretty cool.
So
It's just neat that you can track that shit back and
Yeah.
like you can take these genetic lines back to like these specific ancient peoples.
right.
And it's a little disappointing that you can see like the some of the social structures just carry through regardless of migration patterns over the subsequent 5,000 fucking years.
Oh yeah, I mean,
It's wild.
it's
fucking wild.
it's fascinating, and it's kind of cool. I mean, you know, it's one of those like why the whole Israel
mean,
story makes no sense though, because like, you know, the Ashkenazi, like, you know, they definitely originally came from there.
Yeah, a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Because-
Like, and the last big wave was like 1,800 years, 1,300
'Cause you
years
see,
ago.
The thing is, and we might get into this a little later. Humans migrate a lot.
Yeah.
It's just a thing we do. It's the sort of thing we've been doing since, honestly, before we were actually a species. Hominids were like big on migration and just going where things were better, looking for better lives in other places until they found what they were looking for.
'Cause-
And it's a beautiful part of our human story.
Right? Because, you know, hominids, the apes that don't get tired when walking.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, our endurance is
we do
terrifying.
We're the only species on Earth that does stalking predation, which is kind of cool. We we evolved to just like bother prey and keep trying to hurt it, like until it got tired and died of like fright and exhaustion, and we just kept walking at it. We're like Terminators.
You as a prey species can be capable of running literally 10 to 15 times faster than we can at our top speed. We will catch you and we will kill you.
Yeah, it's
Because you will get tired and we will not stop.
like almost no other animal on Earth has the endurance that the humans do, and we keep walking.
We are the most terrifyingly unrelenting creatures to ever inhabit this earth.
Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, should we get into the news?
Yeah, like we got. It's been a news week.
Yeah.
It's been a news week.
Speaking of, one just dropped. Oh, God. Florida State.
Florida State. Yeah, I saw that earlier.
6 people injured in a mass shooting.
At the Student Union Center, from what I read.
Wonderful. All right.
Yeah, six injuries. They're already in the hospital.
Hopefully nobody dies.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Do we know anything about it yet?
I have not seen anything specific. No. I don't even know. Last I saw, they were still calling it an active situation.
Suspect is in custody now.
Hey, they caught one.
Yeah.
That's novel. I'm assuming that means he was white.
Probably.
White dude.
Don't know anything yet.
It's probably a white dude.
Yep, they have not said anything about the shooter yet. But yeah, he's in custody.
They'd probably be pretty eager to say some shit if he weren't a white dude.
Oh, this is another one. The Supreme Court is going to hear arguments on Trump's plan to end birthright citizenship.
Like you can't just do that.
Why they couldn't just reject it out of hand?
Yeah,
is a simple one.
Unless their plan is to just like definitively issue a ruling that like, no, this, what are you fucking talking about?
Right.
Which I think partially that's partially what happened with their recent 9-0 decision. I think it was like, we were going to issue a definitive ruling.
Which one?
The 9-0 ruling that they had to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yes, but so you know me, I listen to a few other legal podcasts, and the language of it, like the reason that nobody in the legal world is calling this like a straight win, right, is because they left way too much wiggle room.
Well, they're always gonna
like utilizing terms like. Basically saying that reasonable amounts of time and best effort, right, and any information that they can provide. So, like terms like that, which allow the administration to claim, and that makes everything an uphill fight, right?
Yeah.
Like the administration can say, "Hey, we've done our job," and then it has to go back to the court. The court has to say, "No, you didn't." Goes back up to the Supreme Court, and they have to weigh in on that specific piece of information. They'll probably kick it back down, and this is the type of ruling that allows the administration. It still acts as if the administration is acting in good faith.
I don't. I mean, they might wish that were the case,
right? And we know they're not. It's unambiguous. They tell us that they're not, right?
Wish in one hand, shit in the other. See what you end up with.
I'm gonna pin in that one because I want to talk more about that case during the segment at the end. See, Harvard refuses Trump administration's demand for foreign students' data. Good on you, Harvard.
Harvard is actually doing what everybody should have been doing all along. And also, I saw there's been a call from inside the Big Ten for the Big Ten to band together against the administration as a group.
Good.
So I think maybe Harvard having some goddamn backbone to oppose this nonsense in the slightest might give some other organizations a little bit more willingness to not just capitulate.
Yeah.
Which, that's the thing that drives me crazy about this particular situation that we're in is Trump is not as strong as he acts.
Right.
And he's not as strong as people react to him, and like how people react to his bullshit and their acquiescence. Like, just saying no would go a long way.
Mm-hmm. But of course, with this administration, everything comes with a punishment, right? And so Trump is threatening to block international students from attending Harvard.
He's also intimating they should have their tax-exempt status.
Yep. So if they don't capitulate to his demand for student data, then he's going to make sure that their students don't get visas. And
I mean, let's be honest, we're not going to offer student visas anyway.
Yeah. Well, the billionaire. Here's the thing, though: the billionaire class still wants their H-1Bs, right? They want their feeder system of the Ivies are still going to get the foreign students, right? The big schools are still going to get them.
I wonder how many foreign students are going to want to come.
I mean, there's that.
But you're going to have a hard time recruiting talent.
Yeah. But
when we've reached the point where people are being deported for like traffic tickets they got 10 years ago right now.
I mean, yeah, the numbers are going to plummet, but there's always going to be, as long as Harvard is Harvard and Columbia is Columbia, right? There's always going to be a demand from overseas for top talent to go there. You know, this is, again, I try to think, how did the Weimar happen, right? And people always still went, right?
Yeah.
You know, black jazz singers still went to Berlin, right? They shouldn't have. Some of them got into trouble, right? But they went because there was a demand still. You know, it's fucked up as it may seem. And I'm always going to operate on that principle as if there's always going to be a percentage that will buck the market, you know, and do the dumb. Let's see. A resentencing hearing for the Menendez brothers?
Really? That's not something I'd heard about.
No. Holy hell.
That's interesting.
Right?
What's the deal with that?
Wow. Let's see.
God.
So after months of contentious court fights, a judge will hear arguments on whether the brothers should be resentenced in a murder case. Wow. Paris serving life, obviously. Last year's Netflix documentary show, like, brought attention back to their case.
Yeah, I remember when it was pretty big news and people were talking about it for the first time in a long time. I'm old enough to remember when it happened.
I remember when it happened. I did not watch all the details, but I do remember, like, from what I did gather, their parents were really shitty.
I didn't watch the trial, but I remember the way we talked about them specifically at the time.
Yeah.
And it was not kind.
No, but
it was not kind. It was, and you know, it was the late 80s, early 90s. There was still a lot of like, well, you fucking had it coming, child. You deserve to be abused because you're their kid and they can do whatever they want to you.
That's a lot of parents and adults I knew were talking that way, but a lot of like young adults and teens were like sympathetic.
Yeah.
Right. And that was something I remember from the time period. And they found, you know, we were more interested in them as individuals, right, than just their.
And there was a lot of dismissal of like, well, they were rich. Their parents couldn't have been abusive.
Yeah, no.
There's no way they could have been sexually abused. Those aren't the sort of people who do that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that going on. And I don't know what the truth is. I obviously wasn't there. What year was that? 89, 90, something like that?
God.
It was a long ass time ago.
Yeah, I don't even remember the exact year.
It's been like 35 years.
Trial in 93 was...
Yeah, so I was 14 when the trial happened.
Ended in a deadlock, and then 96 they were convicted in a second trial. That's right. Yeah, because again, the jury heard how abusive and terrible and shitty their parents were, and that it wasn't as like the defense, like I believe, argued it wasn't as meticulously planned as the prosecutors were. So it was basically like, we want them for first degree, and here's how much they planned it. And then the defense was like, well, no, they were abused, and it was a little more spontaneous. And that seems to be the contention still to this day. It's amazing. But wow, it's a throwback, man.
That's wild,
isn't it?
I mean,
cultural touchstone moment, really. It was a big deal.
You do have to ask the question, if they were convicted in 96, 29 years ago, and they were young,
right?
What benefit is there to keeping them in prison for the rest of their lives?
Right.
Like, what does it really accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, the people that they killed are dead, and they're not coming back. They're their next of kin, so it's not like there's a huge pool of I mean, they had other family, but really, like, you know, typically one of the reasons that we punish crime so harshly, you know, especially murder, is for the peace of mind of the victims' families, right? For the victims, the survivors,
which it still never really provides.
No, it doesn't.
Like, you can't come back from that really emotionally.
Yeah, I don't. Which, I mean, to be honest, we should put less stock in what the victims' families think.
I mean,
like, in my opinion, like, it doesn't help. We're wired to want revenge. It takes a lot to get to a point of forgiveness and acceptance and grace.
The only person I know personally who was ever murdered, his killers were actually acquitted. So that's a different.
Yeah. But you think about it, and you realize, the survivors are the ones who are like they seek revenge. It's wired in us pretty heavily, right? And that we base too much of our system around trying to appease that. In my opinion.
It shouldn't be the state's job to get revenge for you.
Right.
There's a difference between justice and revenge.
Exactly.
We lose sight of that very, very rapidly in this country.
And we capitalize on it politically too easily. Like the concept of what about the victims? What about this person? What about the survivors? What about the family members? And they get pulled out as props. We pull out the most emotionally vulnerable, angry, sad, wounded people
at their most tortured.
Yep.
And tormented.
And we bring them into the spotlight. And you've got fathers who have not gotten over their child's murder 20 years ago who are still advocating for like the most harsh and brutal criminal sentences, and politicians just bringing them up for hearings and like, look at this guy, and that's why we have a law and that will punish everybody, and it always makes everything worse.
You couple
always makes it worse.
You couple that with a culture that encourages anger as like the only really valid emotion.
Yep.
Like, I mean, honestly, regardless of the situation, the only valid emotion you are allowed to have in our culture, where no one will ever like have a problem with you feeling something, is if you are angry.
Yeah.
Like, people, if you're too happy, people call you cringe.
Right.
If you're sad, you're fucking weak.
Yep.
But you can be as angry as you want to be, as often as you want to be, and everybody is just going to be like, well, that's fair.
Angry is masculine. It's mighty. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Anger leads to power, you see.
Feeling anything else is a weakness.
Yeah. And
God forbid you have empathy for another human being.
What?
Yeah.
What's that word? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, I don't
that
know.
doesn't compute.
Never heard of it before.
Yeah. Crazy talk, motherfucker. But yeah, so the Menendez brothers being held in prison for the rest of their lives doesn't do anybody any good. It's been 30 years.
30 years.
Like,
almost 29.
29 years since they were sentenced. 30 years, over 30 years since the trial started.
Yeah, because they weren't
30.
They were they released between trials, or were they held? I can't remember.
I don't remember, but
I feel like they were held because they were considered flight risks.
Yeah, that's possible. But yeah, during their trials, they were in the prison garb, right? And so that they weren't
out and about
on bail, right? Because the ones that are out and about on bail get to show up in their suits, right? But they
have that optical advantage of looking like a respectable person, not just a criminal.
Exactly. They got a hung jury looking like they were criminals. Yeah, good for them again.
By the way, if you didn't know, we do that on purpose.
Yeah, we do.
We do that on purpose because people with money can afford cash bail.
Yeah. We also used to allow people who were in jail to change into suits for their trials, and some states still do, but a lot of them don't. California, for all its liberal pretense, is like one of the mass incarceration like machines of the United States.
It's really easy with the way people talk about California. It's really easy to forget that in our lifetimes they've had like multiple Republican governors and some of the worst Democratic governors in the history of Democratic governors.
Yep. And
they are weird. They're conservative Democrats across the board.
Their affluent white cities are, because let's face it, they got a lot of people of color, but they have very affluent white cities that are very tough on crime.
Yeah.
Right. Los Angeles has all of its diversity and everything else around it, but it has a core of a rich white America, right? Yeah. San Francisco, holy hell, Palo Alto,
and there's a reason
right?
why, like, the LAPD has historically been held up as one of the most egregious examples of like institutional police abuse.
Yeah,
from the department itself. The LA County Sheriff's Office is like literal Nazis.
They have gangs, They have actual gangs in the LA County Sheriff's Office that they have not been able to get rid of, haven't been able to root out, haven't been able to catch in the act.
Yeah.
But the Department of Justice knows of more than one active criminal gang in the LA Sheriff's Office, and we haven't been able to do shit about it.
Like Sons of Anarchy shit.
Yeah.
Type gangs of cops.
Yeah.
Sheriff's deputies.
It's insane.
Just thinking they're the Punisher. You ain't Frank Castle.
And they're shaking down drug dealers and fighting over turf, and it's crazy.
Running their own criminal enterprises right out from their fucking
protection rackets.
Yeah,
and we haven't been able to do shit about it. That should tell us something.
That's your alleged liberal mecca.
Yeah. Also, that's the state of every time you're like, oh, the police, we trust and respect. No, that you give people power and no consequences, no oversight, and it's going to attract the kind of people that having power with no consequences and no oversight
appeals to.
Yeah. And then they're going to do the kinds of things that the job allows.
And the job allows some pretty fucked up shit.
Yep.
With a lot of latitude, a lot of plausible deniability,
like
a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't do evil things protecting you.
Yeah.
Just because you're part of the brotherhood.
There was
that thin blue line shit.
There was a piece of research I read. It was years ago, but it was like 70% of cops have either committed or allowed another officer to commit perjury.
Yeah, I'd have no problem believing that at all. I'm surprised it's only as low as 70%.
Right, but that's 70% have either lied on the stand or allowed another officer to lie on the stand.
Yeah, and
that is big.
And
I 7 out of 10.
I understand how, like, in principle, people who start out as good people want to be in law enforcement. They want to serve their community. They want to do good. They want to catch the bad guys. The system corrupts you.
Yep.
And you don't even know it's happening while it's happening to you.
And look, I get it. I can get the vigilante impulse that also exists in there, because again, that perjury number, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons they do it, obviously, is to get the convictions, right?
Yeah.
And now they, for whatever reason, believe the person is guilty. Sometimes it's for a good reason. Other times it's just they've got their eyes locked on the person, and they want them to go down for it. One of the two. That happens. Now, when they do believe the person is guilty, our system of checks and balances requires them to not only believe that, but be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. There is a burden of proof, and it is on the people making the affirmative claim.
And sometimes getting that one piece of evidence, like dead to rights, is not easy. Right?
Yeah.
Sure. So it's frustrating to them.
And sometimes,
but I don't care if it's frustrating.
Sometimes Sometimes you come across what would be legitimate evidence in a way that you can't use it.
Yep.
And you will just stretch the truth as much as you need to allow it to be admissible.
That's exactly right. And they will stretch the truth about what they saw. They'll stretch the truth about how they got evidence, right?
When they'll change the timeline.
Yep.
Oh, they saw this thing after they got the warrant instead of before they got the warrant.
Yeah.
And that's all perjury.
Yeah.
It's all corrupting.
And it's corrupting is what we should worry about. I mean, in America, we have this concept that, at least we got the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? But it's
no. You can be corrupted by good intentions. You made somebody a bad guy
in the process. As soon as you start doing the bad to get the bad guy, you start walking down the same path.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous.
At that point, you might as well just literally become a vigilante.
Right.
Why, if you're going to work outside the law, just work outside the law? Why have any pretense about it? Just fucking go full Punisher, you dirty, hairy lunatics.
Let's see. More than half of Puerto Rico remains without power.
Since when?
Since.
Please don't tell me Hurricane Maria, because that was 8 years ago.
Let's see. They had a series of failures and a blackout yesterday across the whole island. 60% lost power yesterday.
Wow.
That
I don't know if all of our viewers and listeners know this, but they're all Americans. actual American citizens. The fine people of Puerto Rico. Because we weirdly own it. Even if they do not have the full privileges of being Americans that the rest of us enjoy.
Speaking of, miraculously, the the Abrego Garcia case, all of a sudden, some documents from a domestic violence case with his wife from back in 2001 have appeared, and they're in the news now about how he got angry and they got into a fight and he grabbed her hard by the arm and might have scratched her. And
obviously he deserves to die in an extermination camp for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. One of the lawyers I follow on TikTok brought this up. All of the things that they're saying about why he needs to be sent, he deserved to be sent to CCOT. Oh, he's a member of MS-13. He's involved in human trafficking. He's a terrorist.
Right.
They're saying all these things publicly, but the one place they never say any of that stuff is in any court filing at all, anywhere.
Yeah. No, they didn't. They haven't said any of that. In fact, they've admitted that they don't have anything on him.
Yeah.
They at first admitted it was a mistake, and they fired not only the attorney who admitted that it was a mistake and said that he was trying to get the government to get him back, right? Then they fired that guy's supervisor for being a bad supervisor, for not enforcing that.
Right, for having a subordinate who told the truth.
Right. And now they're basically trying to smudge him here. Apparently the two of them went to counseling and, they still are married.
Yeah.
It's been 4 years. But now those documents are out. It looks like they just really want to trash this guy's reputation.
Right.
So that we can all just move on and forget that they
sent someone to an extermination camp without due process.
Yep.
On foreign soil. And Chris Van Hollen, senator from Maryland, where Mr. Garcia was living when he was kidnapped by ICE agents or people purporting to be ICE agents or bounty hunters working on behalf of ICE, as the case may be.
Right.
Went to El Salvador, specifically he was hoping to retrieve the man and bring him home.
Right.
Short of that, he at least wanted to speak to him, see how he was doing in the El Salvadoran torture facility. And he was denied that. He was not allowed to see Kilmar Abrego Garcia in person. He was not allowed to speak to him on the phone. He was told by the vice president of El Salvador, however, that the United States government, via the Trump administration, was still actively paying the government of El Salvador to house him in CCOT. So your tax dollars, my tax dollars, your tax dollars are paying to keep an innocent man in an extermination camp in a foreign country, slave labor camp. Well, they are kept in their cells 23 and a half hours a day.
Yeah, but apparently they are pulling people out to do work. From what I heard, that's what it's built for. So, who knows?
Well, that's the thing. No one knows.
Yeah.
No one knows because no one who has been inside as a prisoner has ever left. And when you have a facility that only holds 48,000 people that they have been sending to until they die for years, and they have never run out of space, you have to start asking some very unpleasant questions about what is actually happening behind those walls. Because, it's cute how they will keep letting in Republican senators and representatives for photo ops in front of cells where they're basically just doing a big thumbs up about how cool it is that we're running a concentration camp on foreign soil.
The cruelty is the point.
The cruelty is the point. And
yeah. And in other news, Trump blasts Fed Chair Powell, saying his termination can't come fast enough because he gave a warning about how bad the tariffs were for the economy and that every Fed projection says this is bad because, again, we have experts. I don't care if you're an end the Fed schmuck out there who doesn't believe in central banking, wants us to go back to the gold standard, to switch over to Bitcoin. Fuck off, stop listening, you're an idiot. We don't need you as part of the audience.
You're too stupid for us. We don't respect you enough. We don't respect you enough to allow you to hear our voices speaking.
Right. Yeah, right. So we have no respect for you whatsoever.
It's
like there's lots of good criticisms of Fed policies, but it's like,
individual policies.
Individual policies.
But the idea as a whole.
Yeah.
It's it's the only sort of monetary system that makes sense in a modern global economy.
Yeah, particularly within democracies.
Yeah,
you don't want or democratic republics.
Yeah, you don't want you don't want your currency dependent upon the volatility of the price of gold.
Yeah, nor do you want your currency. Nor do you want your currency and your monetary policy dependent on the political whims of the day.
Yeah,
the popular ones. That is dangerous. That's how you get hyperinflation or deflation or a completely collapsing currency. And say what you want, we've had the most stable and enduring central bank in the world for a century now. And
it's not perfect, but it's working.
Yep, and it works better than everyone else's. And
like until we are ready to go to a global system that does not have money at all,
right?
Which I don't know if you've noticed, we are not quite there yet.
I don't think we're even 0.1% there yet.
No, that reminds me of something that has been bothering me lately about our leftist friends and their policy prescriptions. Because there's something that I don't feel that they fully understand or appreciate.
Okay.
If you could snap your fingers and tomorrow the entire U.S. economy was like worker-owned and worker-run, and like the workers in the United States fully owned the means of production in this country,
right?
And we all shared in the profit of every single business in this country in some super egalitarian way.
Sure.
That would not necessarily do anything to improve the living conditions of anyone outside the United States of America whatsoever.
No, it wouldn't. And I mean, so from a moral and ethical standpoint, like I want to improve the living conditions of the people around the world.
Yes.
From a practical standpoint, and a quasi-selfish one at the same time, right? Being an American living in the United States and, existing within our economy. Like, obviously, I would like anyone, I want to make sure that I'm okay.
Yeah.
Before
the people you know are okay. The people you care about are okay. Even it's even important for people you don't necessarily know or give a shit about to be okay, because that means they have more income to spend on your shit.
Right.
Like it's
so
it's all better. Like the better everybody is doing, the better everybody does.
Right. But my layer of care is stronger the closer it is.
It becomes diffused in different types of care, more abstraction.
Yeah. And so so for the selfish reason, obviously, like I care first about making sure that we're okay. Second, though, the practical is I can only really influence and exist in this one, right? And so, it doesn't improve the system for the world, but each country has to get on its own shit, and we can help. Yeah, we can help. We can encourage. Like, here's a particular example that always blows me away, and this is directed at pretty much specific leftists we know personally. There are some unbelievably valid complaints about the working conditions at like the Foxconn manufacturing facility where iPhones are made. Right, there are an almost infinite number of things you can say about the working conditions in that facility and how they need to be improved. And you can rightfully say that Apple should lean on the facility to improve the working conditions for the people in the factory, because they are its largest buyer and they have like the economic clout to do that. By the same token, the working conditions of the employees working in the Foxconn facility are the legal minimums that are allowed by the CCP. China allows those working conditions to exist within their borders. That the same people who will tell me how great the Chinese Communist Party is will refuse to acknowledge that the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for the working conditions of the people in China blows my fucking mind. Yeah, it is all American capitalists, all bad all the time, is their thinking, and that they believe that all problems derive from that, when it's the very powerful, rather authoritarian, not terribly democratic government of the highest population country on earth that does most of the world's manufacturing.
And does it exceptionally well.
Right. They are not, like, So, you can't have this like China's going to be is a growing superpower, and it's going to be the next power, and it's doing all these great things, and it has no power over its laws.
Yeah.
And it can't stop American capitalists from exploiting its people. Like
you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It doesn't happen.
Like you have to be able to acknowledge that governments, regardless of what government we are talking about, mistreat both their own citizens and those outside of their borders.
Yep. And also, in this case, it's actually just allowing industry to do what industry wants to do.
Yeah.
I remember I saw dumb arguments from one of those fucking MAGA chuds talking about how, well, so you're just defending slave labor in China. Like, how many American factories have ever had nets to prevent suicide? I'm like, bro, you really don't know much about our period of when we were in China's position as a major manufacturing hub. Like, the jungle, again, we talked about it on the show weeks ago. The jungle was not fiction. Like, I mean, it is fiction, but it wasn't fiction.
See, we had to read The Jungle when I was in middle school. Is that just not a thing anymore?
I don't know. I
read it.
Do
people just not read it anymore?
I don't know.
I'll be honest. I can't remember if we read the
required reading.
I can't remember if we read the entire thing or just excerpts. I think we just read excerpts, but it was like people losing their fucking fingers in like meat processing plants and their fucking fingernails being in goddamn hot dogs, shit like that.
And you, the consumer, winding up eating parts of people that went into machine. Right. And like working conditions were awful. People committed suicide at very high rates, but a lot of the problem is, I mean, I guess you think about it, we had this whole concept of this like nuclear family where the father fucking is required to support the family and everybody must have bunches of kids, right?
Right.
And so, of course, we were working men to death, and they didn't kill themselves because if they did,
their families would starve.
So, instead they just walked around as fucking zombies being tormented by our economic system and dying at, the age of 40 or 50.
And then we told them they weren't allowed to drink for 3 years.
And the world went to hell. And actually so many of our problems today still stem from prohibition. I mean,
the prohibition mindset, it's
and also the legal structures that were created during it.
I mean, some of our dumb
federal law enforcement, prohibition of drugs, the right to prohibit drugs.
Most Americans do not understand how like arcane and bizarre and weird and labyrinthine like our distribution systems for alcohol are in this country.
Yeah.
It is wild. That's why there are some liquors you just can't get certain places because they don't have a local distributor and the manufacturer isn't allowed to actually distribute it themselves.
Yep. There are state laws, county laws. And every state is different.
You've got states where the states own all the liquor stores.
Yeah. North Carolina.
Pennsylvania. I don't know if Pennsylvania still is, but Pennsylvania was that way when I was growing up.
Interesting. But so many of our criminal justice system problems stem from the Prohibition era and systems that were built out of it. And that's where we get the monolith of federal law enforcement that we have today. And the federal government having this like series of, well, we can criminalize this and we can criminalize that and we can criminalize this, and people don't need to have this drug and they can't touch this, and anything that they enjoy over here that we haven't sanctioned is going to now be a felony, right?
Yeah.
That all came from Prohibition.
The FBI was born out of like an effort to tackle the organized crime that was born out of Prohibition.
Exactly.
My great-grandfather was a bootlegger.
Good for him.
He was also a cop.
I mean, that makes sense.
He was also one of the first people convicted of vehicular manslaughter for drunk driving. It's my family legacy.
Hey, fun news in science. Live colossal squid, a super heavyweight of the deep sea, caught on video for the first time. We finally caught like a giant fucking colossal squid.
I haven't looked into the details, but
23 feet.
I also saw that they found what appear to be some pretty compelling signs of alien life on I think it's like Kepler 12b.
Nice.
Yeah.
British Army uses radio wave weapon to knock out drone swarm. So
It seems handy, potentially.
it does. That's the things that aren't really getting talked about much in the news are things like these like drone swarm technologies. You see those cool videos of like China, you see these cool videos of like China like being able to like make patterns of things.
They've done it over the pier a couple of times.
Yep. And it seems really cool, but that same technology can be utilized to like control a swarm of drones. And they've been using these things where you just put like a bunch of small explosives on 1,000 drones, right? Send them. And
speaking of drones,
how can you stop them all? So we're going to need some kind of technology to knock it down.
Speaking of drones, have you heard about the NLRB whistleblower thing that's happening right now?
No.
So, a whistleblower from who worked at the NLRB has come forward with some very compelling evidence of exactly what Doge was doing when they were in the building.
Okay.
Which was basically harvesting data, just like gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of data from the NLRB almost indiscriminately. They were also creating their own login accounts to log into the systems at the NLRB. And they were turning off the protocols that they would use to prevent access from certain locations. And as soon as they did that, they noticed that all of a sudden the logins that Doge created were being used to access NLRB data from IP addresses originating in Russia.
That's weird.
That's weird. And the guy who whistle blew this also said that after he started to come public with one of these things, he found a note on his door with aerial photographs of him walking his dog in his neighborhood, telling him to be quiet.
Interesting.
That he's pretty sure were taken via drone.
Right.
So it came back to drones in a long about way. But yeah, so this is a story that's just broken like in the last maybe 36 hours, maybe even as little as 24.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that one.
But it does point to like
I assume you found it off TikTok. That's your usual.
This was on Rachel Maddow last night.
Oh, Maddow. Okay.
This was on Maddow last night.
Good. All right.
She had an interview with the whistleblower.
Gotcha. She is like I love Maddow for these things. I have not caught her in a minute. I need to actually catch up with her work.
But yeah, this is like mainstream news. But it does raise the question of was Doge doing the same thing in every single other agency that it was just given free reign to do whatever it wanted to in?
Yeah.
Has Russia just had backdoor access to literally all U.S. government agency information for the last 70 days?
Jesus. Speaking of...
That's a distinct possibility.
The U.S. and Ukraine are in high-level talks again.
Okay.
There doesn't seem to be an end in sight. We keep pushing to try to basically force it, but it's not happening.
I thought he was going to end it on day one.
Yeah, well, he's never going to do anything he ever said he's going to do because he's a piece of shit. Well,
he's going to do some of the shit he said he's going to do.
He's just never going to actually do the things that people really wanted him to do.
Yeah,
those big promises that
he's going to do all the things
X, Y, and Z.
He's going to do all the things people who voted for him but weren't MAGA told me I didn't need to worry about him doing because that was just shit he was saying to get people to vote for him.
Yep,
he's going to do all those things.
He's going to do all of those things. He has been. Good job.
Actively, yeah. Congratulations.
But meanwhile,
you got played.
Large Ukrainian offensive has wiped out 140 Russian troops, 29 vehicles in a southern assault. Good for them.
I remember when this was supposed to last like a long weekend.
Yep.
Several years ago. Israel
is keeping troops in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria indefinitely, according to their defense minister. Their food blockade has been malnourishing thousands upon thousands of children in Israel. That's great. Let's see. Meanwhile, Putin is actually talking about how humanitarian Hamas was with some of the hostages and freeing them, and he's hosting one of the hostages at the Kremlin, and like talking about like how well Hamas treated him. This is getting fascinating.
I mean, yeah, none.
It's just weird. It's just
none of the
Putin,
hostages.
What are you doing?
None of the hostages who have spoken publicly have said they were abused.
Right.
Like they've said that the conditions weren't great, but I also said that like their captors were living in the exact same conditions.
Right.
And they were pretty fucking miserable about it too.
They were doing what they could to try to keep them alive, keep them safe, keep them fed.
Get them medical attention when they needed it.
Right.
As limited as their ability to get people medical attention was at that point.
Right. If there are stories of them being brutalized by their captors and you know of them, let us know. I don't know.
I have not heard any.
I haven't heard or seen
I have
any.
not heard any from anybody who was actually a captive.
Right. Let's see here. Anything else interesting in the news that you can think of?
Let's see, what else is there? I feel like there's something.
United Health Group stock dropped 23%. Speaking of which, how's the market doing today?
Fucking RFK Jr.
Oh, the autism thing.
Fucking RFK Jr. calling autism an epidemic that has no genetic component and that is destroying lives because children with autism will never pay taxes, will never play baseball, will never go on a date, and most of them will never be able to use a toilet unassisted. Let me tell you something, Bobby. You want to know how well I have control over my bowels as an autistic man? I will shit in your mouth until you choke on my feces.
Yeah. Like, here's the thing.
With perfect precision.
Like, one, it's a spectrum disorder, you dumb piece of shit. Two, you're commissioned to find out whether or not it's caused by environmental factors. Shouldn't have a guy who has been prosecuted for running like illegal research without a medical license. And fraud. Like,
interestingly enough,
you shouldn't bring a fraudster on to read.
Interestingly enough, one of the things that he was found to have done was to surreptitiously give puberty blockers to autistic children.
Yeah.
So the same puberty blockers that you people scream about being too dangerous to give to trans kids so they can delay puberty and figure out their shit. No. It's okay to give it to autistic kids without telling them. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fucking acceptable.
Experimenting on autistic children with puberty blockers, fine. Trans kids choosing to delay puberty while they figure out what their gender identity is.
That's child abuse.
That's child abuse. Fuck you, idiots. So,
and you know what? Here's the thing.
But he's got this fraudster, and it's a spectrum. You fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Love on the Spectrum. That show. I just watched like 2 episodes of the other day. It's kind of cute. I got to admit, remember our episode on Xenial humor, right? And how kind of deep down inside we're a little bit bad people. My inner bad person comes out when I watch it.
That's fair.
And I laugh a little bit too much at it rather than with it, and I shouldn't. I
you also know that.
Yeah, I know that about myself. But it's cute. I'm just a bad person.
But you can see the different levels of support needs.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. And not a one of them can't wipe their ass.
Right.
And most of them have jobs.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they may not be doing well in life.
They might be a little socially awkward.
Yeah.
A little inelegant in how they relate to other people.
But these ones are also fairly high on, like, I wouldn't say high. I would say they have fairly high needs as far as care goes.
And accommodations,
And accommodations go for being on the spectrum. Like, as far as it goes, there are not many more steps further, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that are, yes, those are the can't wipe their ass, can't do X, Y, and Z.
Those are
help.
rare.
Those are so rare.
And
so rare.
And so
there's a TV show that's showing like people that are way towards the extreme of the spectrum, right? And they're all way more functioning than RFK Jr. is letting on to be. So fuck you, asshole.
And one thing I have already seen since he made those comments is people speculating about, like, imagine what we could do with all the resources we would save if we didn't have to accommodate these people.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it's just full-on eugenics.
Yeah.
It's just eugenics. That's all it is.
Like, I mean...
and the support needs are very different. Like, my accommodations are, it's like people find out that I'm a little on the spectrum. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. It's mostly explaining my behavior to myself.
Yeah.
More than anything else, it's like me knowing why I act the way I act in certain situations, and why I struggle in certain situations. I'm like, okay, that's why. Yeah. And it makes it easier to not struggle.
Right. And as a coworker and employer for you, like, worst accommodation is knowing that the smallest thing makes you angry briefly for a period of time, and to really just not engage with the fact that you are yelling at a ice machine.
Yeah,
like that's us accommodating him.
It's the espresso machine when I burn myself.
Yes.
Because that espresso machine is angry and temperamental.
It is.
And it sprays in weird places.
But I love that the building could be on fire, like this background here, and you're just like, this is fine. I'm going to go grab the fire extinguisher. Yeah. But the smallest thing is out of place or broken.
Oh, yeah, like bang my knee on something. Yeah, and it's like just, the end of the fucking world for like 45 seconds. Yeah. And then it didn't happen.
It's amazing, but it's like that's our accommodation for your autism.
I mean, that's our accommodation for everybody who works there. Let's be honest, because
oh my God, did you see that? I posted that sign that said I was walking the dog, and I sent that to the chat.
the autistic person area.
The autistic person area.
Yeah, we saw the coyotes.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then there was like 3 coyotes like really close to me. They went the other direction while I was walking the dog. I was like, good, because they're afraid of me.
There is a gargantuan coyote that roams my neighborhood. Like he is 35 to 40% larger than any coyote I've ever seen in my life, and we've been within 15 feet of each other a couple of times. Like he is bold and is probably going to become a problem at some point, but I ain't going to tell anybody.
Yeah,
I ain't going to do anything about it until it becomes a problem.
I was glad that again they're more afraid of like they're afraid of tall people, right?
Yeah,
you know, like they're afraid of people because they're taller and move.
They don't,
because I had my dog with me. I was walking little Stiggin, and
you're not going to get attacked by a coyote, but your pet might.
Right,
your cat might. If you let your cat outside, your cat might get eaten.
And I got a couple of neighbors that have like indoor-outdoor cats. And I felt a little worried. I was like, ooh,
small dogs.
I was like less than 3 blocks from my house.
They might attack and fight a larger dog, but they probably wouldn't win.
Yeah,
like they might.
Fun
like
story.
A bigger dog, they're probably both going to get pretty fucked up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
When I was in the insurance business, I had this farmer client that out in Minnesota that lived. The back of their property was against this like public park, right? This big like a wildlife preserve.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a big pack of coyotes apparently that lived back there, and he didn't know about it at first. But he had this dog that used to be like an outdoor dog during the day, and then come home and it'd be an indoor dog when they're home, right? Because big plot of land and well trained like large pet mix, and she was like 80 pounds, right? One day he comes home and his front door is like broken open, like destroyed. Like a big hole through it, and there's blood everywhere. He's like, what the hell? And he goes in and he finds her like all bit up underneath the bed hiding, and she's bleeding, and she gets care, and she's okay, nothing critical.
Okay.
But he goes out like follows the trail of blood and mess that she left, and finds 6 dead coyotes.
Damn, good for her.
Yeah, good for her.
Good for her.
But apparently he found tracks, like a lot more tracks, and so there was apparently like 15 or 20 that like ganged up on her, and
She killed 6.
She killed
and got
6
away.
and then got away.
Good for her. Right. Good dog. God damn.
Yeah, but she was from that day forward. She would not go out on a walk without him.
I mean, I wouldn't either.
She refused to go like towards that area anymore. Like
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, her whole mindset changed. She went from being this like really like I am happy to just wander around my property, right? Because it's right here.
It's her property.
It's her property. That's all she ever did. She never went off. She was happy to do that. And then went, no, I am staying 10 feet from the house unless I'm with my owner.
The biggest animal we had akin to anything like a coyote where I grew up were foxes.
Okay.
And they weren't, I mean, a cat can beat up a fox.
Yeah.
Like foxes are fairly weak and small, but we used to have wolves, but it was the Northeast, and we fixed that problem. Which is why we have to have hunting season every single year, so the deer population doesn't explode and die.
Yeah, my part of where I grew up didn't have much other than coyotes and some foxes, some badgers.
When I moved to Florida, it was the first time I'd lived anywhere that had like real wild predators. Because we have coyotes, we have alligators,
right?
When I
went up north and shit, I'd run into wolves, coyotes, bears.
We probably have way more panthers than they lead on.
Years ago, at the Largo location one night at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I was out front having a cigarette. And I looked across that parking lot. You know, there's the wooded area and the creek down there. And I see something that looked like a dog. I'm like, a dog? And I was looking and I was watching it. It's like, it's moving like a cat. That's too big for a cat.
Too big for a cat.
That's too big. It's like, no, that's a cat.
That is a big-ass cat.
That's a big... Oh.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was like, basically it looked like about like a 40-pound dog size, right?
Yeah.
40, 50-pound dog size. And I realized, but it was moving and it was shaped like a cat. And I was like, that is a Florida panther.
Yeah, one time when my parents were driving back from the casinos in Immokalee to where they lived in Fort Myers, they were on some little back road in the middle of fucking scrub area, and they hit one with the car. And my dad said it was just like, he just felt a thud and looked up, and the entire windshield was just like a cat's face for a fraction of a second. Then it rolled off the hood and like ran off into the woods.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And they never saw it again. And they had to like, but it fucked up the car. They had to like get the front end like body work done, and look, the hood was dented.
The absolute coolest thing about the Florida panther, the cougar, the puma, right, is that it is all the same species with a micro variation, like a regional variation that changes their anatomy a bit.
Yeah, because we only have one big cat on this continent.
Right. And it's all the exact same one, and they're all capable of breeding together, but they're like they have this small genetic variation that alters their size and their adaptation to the environment. Like, so the Florida panther is smaller and more adapted to swamplands and wetlands, right, and marshes, right, whereas in the Dakotas, right, they're way more inclined to like climb and shit, and then when you get down to the Southwest, they get much bigger. It's weird, like
and much more aggressive.
Yeah, like it's really kind of cool.
You could be in the Florida scrub, wandering around on foot, and there could be a panther 5 feet to your left. You would never know it, and it would never fuck with you.
Yep.
Like, it would go out of its way to not let you know it was there. It's not going to jump you. It's not going to try to kill you. It doesn't view you as food.
Right.
You go to, like, Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
And you're out in the desert. A mountain lion will stalk you for miles.
Yeah.
Silently waiting for its opportunity to suffocate you by clamping its jaws down on the back of your fucking neck.
Now, it is significantly larger.
Yeah.
And it is way less likely to have like it fights for prey against coyotes and shit, but nothing else, right? So it's got no other predators that are really fighting for territory with it except coyotes, but coyotes are pretty big, right? So it's got that tension going, but they're like territorial, and so they take wide territories as their own. And if you wind up in it, it looks at you like you're fucking food. But down here, they're little things, and there are other predators like gators and shit. So they learn not to fuck around because they might find out.
Florida panthers are just small enough that
and there's Florida red wolves. They used to exist in large numbers. Now they're not.
We have gators though too.
Yeah,
like I mean, there aren't many places in the U.S. where you can be guaranteed that if you go outside, there is, and you are near a body of water, fresh water. There is something that is willing to eat you, like 99% of the time.
Yep. Florida is though. I don't fuck with the fresh water around here. At the springs are going to the springs, and like I don't like the cold, so I barely go to the springs because the water's too cold for me. But aside from that, that's the only place I'll go into fresh water because you can see into it. Right? I'm not fucking with fresh water around here.
They're ambush predators. They don't like crystal clear water.
Yeah.
So that ain't for them.
So springs I'll go to. Any other fresh water in Florida can fuck right off.
Oh yeah, there's I can walk right down to Clam Bayou from here, and like I could just see them. Yeah, they just hanging out, floating around.
I see gators all the fucking time. Anytime I go out to parks and shit. Yeah, so I'm
go to Boyd Hill.
I am not going out to any fresh water around here.
One time I was at Boyd Hill and I realized that like on a branch there was like a baby gator that was at like fucking face level in a tree. I'm like, how the hell did you get there? And she's like, made that little squeaking sound they make. They make little squeaking sounds when they're tiny because they can't do that grunt thing adults can do. Mature gators.
Yeah, the stock markets, of course, are taking a beating from the tariffs, and
Again.
and Powell is not going to step in to rescue the markets. It's basically at the Fed. That's a big part of the fight there.
I heard mortgage rates have gone up.
Yep, mortgage rates have gone up, which, as somebody who is trying to sell a fucking house, thanks. I mean, I would love for them to come out, but none of these things are going to come. The Fed isn't going to step in until this actually turns from, like, potentially bad and people losing, like, their, like, retirement money and, you know, etc., until it turns into real job losses. Like,
Yeah.
they're not going to step in until...
And it's self-inflicted, and they don't want to deal with that either.
Yeah.
Like, they're well aware that none of this is happening naturally or organically.
Right.
This is us making a bunch of bad policy decisions that are causing these problems that could be solved by not making these bad policy decisions.
And if this Fed steps in to bail it out, it's going to make these bad policy decisions look better temporarily.
Which is not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, is it eliminates the tool in the toolbox that the Fed has. Like, raising rates right now is one of their ways of cooling the economy when they need it to, right? And keeping them where they're at is one of the things keeping it stable. Lowering rates allows for capitalists to start pumping money back into the system. That's how it works, right? It primes the pump, and it creates, here's just a flow of money, and that's why housing fucking goes from, you know, $100,000 to $300,000 in 2 years. 2 years.
Like,
right?
it's insane.
But
Like, some of
it's because free money gets pumped into the system. They gave out too much free money for too long because every time they tried to ease it back, the market looked like it was going to collapse again. So there was just too much money floating in the system for too long. And so now they need to be kind of hands off and let that tool remain in their toolbox. Because once they pull it out, they can't pull it out again.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. It's a one and done thing.
Yeah.
Per economic crisis, it's a once and done.
Right.
A
You
one and done
start
kind
on
of
the,
thing.
the quantitative easing, reducing rates, buying bad assets train, right? Now, there's a couple of tools, but there's just a couple of tools. And once you start using your recession tools,
You have to admit you're in a recession at that point.
Right.
Like,
and the other is you can't stop. You only get to use them,
you know,
once
until you get like a couple of quarters of like negative GDP growth.
Yeah.
They're not, and then you're officially, like, you could say, well, this is a recession for real.
Right. And we need to see unemployment
Yeah.
rise, not just negative growth. We need, like, because again, like 2 quarters of negative of GDP growth used to be a recession. Now we call it what's called a technical recession, because if the economy actually doesn't get hurt by it,
Then what's it matter?
what's it matter?
Yeah.
So
It's
we
not a
need
problem.
to see.
It's not a problem unless it's a problem.
Exactly. So you see that, like, in that post-COVID recession, right?
Yeah.
Where there was that technical recession where, yes, like after COVID, we had the big spike.
And it was global, and it was caused entirely by externalities outside of our control.
All that inflation, but GDP growth went with the inflation. So everything looked like it was,
Yeah.
and then it had to come down, right? And so for like 2 or 3 quarters, we had negative GDP growth, but it was just things correcting back to normal. So it wasn't really a recession.
Yeah, they were finding their proper baseline.
Exactly. And so it wasn't really a recession because jobs didn't get lost. Like, you didn't see a big spike in unemployment, like a major one.
No,
right?
that was, if there's one thing over the course of Biden's 4 years that we saw, it was a incredible decrease in unemployment.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he pulled off a goddamn economic miracle, and like for all his shitty idiot things that he did, like, I'll give him that. Like, he gave the U.S. the first soft landing in a recession in our history, and Trump's about to fuck it all up.
We're fixing that now.
Yep. So that has been as much of the news as we can.
I think that's all the news.
Yep. I mean, there's an antitrust trial with Google. They lost on that one for ads, and there's an antitrust hearing against Meta because, of course, there is. But we know the government's probably not going to do anything real about it.
Speaking of Meta, before we move on, did you hear these are rumors I heard. I haven't had time to look into.
Okay.
Apparently a couple of the power moves that Meta is considering to spur more engagement. One, they're apparently seriously considering offloading Instagram.
Why?
Fuck if I know.
It's like
But you want to ask why? Apparently they are floating the idea internally of resetting on Facebook everyone's friends list to 0. Because you see, everybody would have to re-engage to rebuild their friends list, you see. People wouldn't just leave. Be like, oh, well, shit, all the reasons that I've been here are gone now. I'll just fuck off elsewhere. That wouldn't happen. No, they would be committed to rebuilding. Yeah.
Zuckerberg, do it.
I'm not going to stop you.
I'm not going to stop you. Just do it.
I really...
Mark, this is the best idea you've ever had. I need you to reset everybody, the entirety of the Meta user platform. Reset all of the friends list to 0. Not only that, what I need you to do is go over to Instagram and unfollow everyone. Clear the followers. Start over. Set us all back to 0 so that we can re-engage with your product.
Mm-hmm. We very much will.
This is a great idea, and I absolutely, positively need you to do this.
But yeah, like I said, I don't. These are rumors I heard. I haven't had time to look into them specifically, but yeah, apparently that is stuff that's being floated.
Let the voices inside your head sing. These are your better angels, Mark. These are your better fucking angels. I need you to do this. But yeah, I need you to do this so hard.
I think that little tangent aside, that's it for the news. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad idea.
I
mean, I'd actually be pissed for a day or two, as you know, because I do utilize these tools, and then I would stop using their product forever.
Yeah, okay.
Fuck you.
I am just chomping at the bit for a replacement for TikTok to come out so I can abandon it and start over somewhere fresh with a better user experience, because it's getting bad on that
Somebody
app.
Bring back something like MySpace, but with better friend finding tools. Right.
I loved being able to just make new friends based on shared interests. It's
yeah. What I mean is though, have some tools that are a little more user friendly for it. Have some tools that make customizing the page easier, that make it mobile optimized. Right.
I think maybe the internet was better when everybody did know some basic HTML to make their profile look pretty and have some flashing text that totally didn't give people epileptic fits.
But let's bring something like MySpace back.
Yeah.
Where we can find people by interests, where we can share our favorite songs, where people can see who your top 8 friends are. Because that ranking mattered. You knew.
It did. And
if I wasn't in Gonzo's top 8, he and I would not be friends anymore. Because
I do still have top 8 brain when it comes to
I do too. I rank people.
Yeah.
And they change.
It does change. It does change.
Where they sit in my social hierarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a problem? Is that something to do with our
but yeah, I
types
think
of neurodivergence
I will
plus growing up
if that were a thing that they did, I would be a good first step to making the internet fun again.
Yeah.
We've lost... The internet is not fun right now.
No, it's awful.
Even when I have fun on TikTok arguing with people, I'm arguing with the dumbest fucking people alive about shit that I know they know is wrong.
Right. Oh, did you see the 4chan leak thing?
Oh, shit. We totally forgot to talk about that. We got to talk about 4chan. Holy shit. 4chan's gone. Now, I feel honestly, this might be more for Sam's good news.
Sam's good news.
4chan's gone, Sam.
4chan.
It's gone.
It's gone. It went kaplooey.
And it's probably never coming back.
Yeah,
the fact that it all right, so one of the big things that happened is all of the user information for people who had actually been weird enough to take the time to make accounts on 4chan got leaked.
Yep.
Man, there were a lot of .gov email addresses.
There were. Man, I went to 4chan right now. What did I get?
Just service unavailable.
Yeah. Service unavailable, baby. 4chan is fucking dead. Unlikely to be back.
Apparently, it was the most cartoonishly poorly written code too. It took 2,000 lines of code to allow people to post a new response.
That's
So
bad.
like having like the little text box that you could type in and hit post,
Right.
which is a simple web form. Like I mean, a simple web form was like 2,000 lines of code
Yep.
because it was like it was written like 20 years ago by people who didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it was never updated.
They were in a hurry to replace 2chan because they were kicked
Off that, yeah.
Because they were kicked off that. Yeah, because they were kicked off something awful first. This is great. But their shit got leaked. So much data on the users out there. The source code for it is just out in the wild.
Did you read the specifics of what appears to be Elon's account?
I caught a snippet. I did not go
my
deep.
God. All right.
You go deeper into this shit than I do,
All right,
so you go ahead.
Here's the easiest way I can explain, in broadest terms, the content that Elon was posting.
Mm-hmm.
If you had Job from Lawnmower Man reciting lines from Mein Kampf in English about how I am here to fulfill Hitler's purpose. I will replace your blood with code. I am a god here. I am your digital overlord. Like, it was just thousands of posts like that. It's amazing. And it's all available in plain text that you can read on the open internet now. It's fucking incredible. I highly recommend
The Antichrist.
Yeah. It was like I forget, it was like the Antichrist Zog was his username or some shit like that.
Oh my god.
But it's all just like weird, dumb, fake occult bullshit mixed with Nazism, mixed with weird dystopian techno-futurist fucking singularity nonsense about how he's going to be, all countries will be destroyed and replaced by me.
Yeah.
It's fucking wild.
They would say things like, "You use my tech every day."
Yeah.
This is what happens when and somebody said, "This is what happens when a billionaire reads Revelations and builds rockets."
Yeah.
Wow.
It's fucking amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Ross sent me a link to that
So he also
yesterday.
he said enough. He left enough fucking breadcrumbs of his own. So,
Like, here's the thing: if we had not gotten, if the leak had not happened, and very much confirmed, basically based on like the IP addresses, because all the IP addresses of every post on 4chan ever were leaked in the leak, and they weren't able to like track the IP address and see what servers it was coming from. I mean, he still basically said he was Elon Musk in his posting.
Yeah.
The way he talked about himself made it very clear it was Elon Musk talking about Elon Musk, if you like read what he said publicly.
He breadcrumbed the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm looking at this,
Yeah.
that's what's fascinating about that. Like, I get why a certain segment of dipshits get into conspiracism, right? And they will believe that it is that it's more likely that the powers that be would leave clues and messages and all the things that they're doing so that the number, you had this number plus this number, you get 666,
There
right?
are secret Mason symbols everywhere, so you know they're watching.
Right. So you get all of those, like
Illuminati.
everything that they do, it's this plus this equals this, and that's how we know. And now I understand it's because the idiots that they follow, that are their thought leaders, such as Musk, right, are the type of people who can't help but tell somebody or leave clues or be like little inside
wink,
quips,
wink, nudge, nudge.
nudge, because they're idiots, right? Who can't help themselves.
This is a man who has to beg women through Twitter DMs to allow him to give them his sperm so he can breed
offer them
with
large
them.
amounts of money.
And then when they say no, he can do away with DMs on Twitter because it embarrassed him.
That's amazing.
He did away with likes because likes caused him embarrassment. He's doing away with DMs because DMs have caused him embarrassment.
And
the entire course of human civilization is teetering on the goddamn brink because he is a weirdo who can't get laid.
And actually, that is the problem, but it's not. The problem that our society has, it is teetering on the goddamn brink because we don't have trustable elite institutions that enforce a world where guys like this can't have the power that they do.
Right. He should not exist in a sane world.
Yes.
To have this kind of power.
No individual should have the kind of power that Musk has.
No individual should have the kind of wealth that he has.
No 10 guys should have the kind of combined power and wealth that he has. Like,
there aren't many countries
right,
that should have the power and wealth he has as a single individual.
Yeah. And so you should think about this and realize it's not a failure of just Elon Musk. It's a failure of us and the system and our body politic to rein in the power of guys like this.
And I have said this before, and I will keep saying this until we figure out the problem, which means I will say it until I die. These are all decisions we made ourselves to have our system be this way.
Yep.
And we could just decide to not.
Yeah.
We really could just be like, this isn't working. We're not going to do it anymore. And if we really wanted to, we could.
There's way too much emphasis placed on like this concept of like the way that things order themselves naturally and spontaneous order, right? That things will always just make them. No, they don't. Yeah. We create like markets. I think are kind of natural for any species that's both intelligent and can hoard resources. Right?
I mean, people. Somebody is always going to have a good, or is always going to have a good or provide a service you want that you don't have or can't provide for yourself. It's always been that way.
Sure.
Whether we're trading like just favors or trinkets or seashells or fiat currency, it's all the same basic thing.
Yes. So
it's just how we operate amongst ourselves.
So I believe that markets will persist spontaneously.
Yeah.
Now, what form and shape they take, those are decisions that we make.
You could have non-cash-based market systems. Like you can have...
But systems that allow for large amounts of power to concentrate are decisions that we make.
Yeah.
Power will naturally concentrate in a vacuum, right? Mm-hmm. That's the nature abhors a vacuum. So when you're making the natural argument, what you're actually doing is you're saying there's a vacuum to a check on power here. And nature abhors that vacuum. So the nature of unscrupulous men, right, will be to fill that void.
Right.
Right. That's it.
But I think that's the news.
That's the news.
All right, so we can move on to
good
other
news
things.
For you, Sam.
Yeah, that's your good news. That's all you get this week, by the way.
Right.
All right, we are once again recording.
All right.
We are ready to get into the meat of this meat sandwich that we call content.
Our content.
Fucking
content.
That was awkward.
That was that. Whew, wow. So our topic that we plan to talk about today, not well thought out topic. It's mostly just going to be us venting for a bit. But no, we're going to talk about.
I would say it's a bunch of overlapping related topics.
Yeah. Immigration and migration and
borders and due process.
Yes. That's what we're going to talk about.
Maybe some Salvadoran death camps.
Exactly.
Or at least one. So I hope there's no more than one.
So we have been under the thumb of the new Trump regime. And so far, it's been pretty horrific. Like,
it has in the aggregate been worse than it's been good.
Yeah. And it's being horrific in very specific,
uniquely cruel
ways. Yeah. So we've got the Abrego Garcia case, as we talked about earlier. Green card holder who was mistakenly snatched up off the street, shipped to El Salvador, where he was under protected status as a refugee from. He had asylum because he was targeted by a large gang there that was going to kill him.
His mother owned a business in El Salvador, and she was targeted by the Barrio 18 gang because I think she was going to testify against them in some capacity.
Yep.
And the first thing they did is they said, we will kidnap your oldest son and force him to become a member of our gang if you don't back down. And she got that son to safety. And then they followed up with, "We will kidnap your next youngest son, who was Kilmar, and we will force him to be a member of this gang if you don't back down." And she got him to safety in the United States.
Yep.
Where he was able to, get a protection from deportation order.
Yeah, he has a green card. He has an order protecting him from deportation. He has U.S. citizen children. He is married to a U.S. citizen. And the government is playing word games, trying to keep him there.
A lot of consternation over the difference between facilitate and effectuate.
Yep.
Like they're getting real specific.
And the president of El Salvador is basically saying it's preposterous to the idea to send him back. My assumption is actually that the guy's dead.
That is my unfortunate assumption too.
And
I hope he's not. I hope he's not, but my assumption is he's probably gone.
It has been a complete black hole. No one has talked to him. No one's heard from him.
I think perhaps before we begin too much on this, maybe it would be a good idea for us to state at the outset our very strong opinions that open borders, truly open borders, are both the best idea in terms of like just policy and morality.
Yes. So I have many thoughts on borders and migration and open borders, and it's been a topic I have thought about for years, and I am a staunch advocate for open borders for a variety of reasons.
And this is something that has caused me to have a similar critique of both the left and the right, because both the left and the right in this country, at least, tend to be very nativist. Yes. And hard on immigration and borders and making sure that they're not porous and making sure that we don't let people in to do jobs at low wages or let jobs out, or
particularly the pro-union left, right? Yeah. And I mean all of the left is pro-union, but I mean specifically like the union left, like that concept. It stemmed mostly in the 80s. Unions were very protectionist in the 1980s.
Your Bernie's left. Yeah. Your Bernie Sanders left.
And Bernie had to change and modulate his immigration positions.
His 2016 primary immigration positions were horrible.
Yeah, they were better in 2020.
Right.
And towards the end of 2016, he started to change his position, which says something. But here's why I support open borders. It's really simple. First, the anthropological history of our species.
Right. We have, since before humans were humans, we have been traveling from place to place at our whim to find a better, easier life for ourselves and our families. And
there's no more fundamental human right than the right to go seek safety, shelter, food, housing, work. Right? There's nothing more fundamental to the human condition than that. And the exploration at our heart, right?
That's
of going to see new things and find new things and achieve something and make something of ourselves. It is so truly human, and that's at our core natural. Now, migrating isn't invading, and that's I want to really push back on the right-wing rhetoric there hard.
No.
A group of people migrating to a place and moving somewhere and getting jobs and paying rent and following the laws of the country, right? That's not an invasion.
An invasion is a foreign government trying to take over your government and make it their government.
Yes.
That's an invasion.
That is it. Now,
in the modern sense, like
you could make arguments for like non-state wannabe state actors like ISIL, right? Like Al-Qaeda, trying to take a territory.
Even then, I would call
none of them are trying to take us.
Right. I would also describe that as more of an infiltration or an infestation.
Yeah.
With like.
But like if they start trying to actually take territory, like actually act as the state
and hold it,
and hold it,
which happened
in government,
which happened in parts of the Levant, like ISIL did take land and hold it in
Syria and Iraq,
and held small towns and villages in absolute tyranny and fear,
and then they become a state actor. Then, once they're doing that, once they're taking those steps,
but that's the level you have to get to be considered an invading force.
So the Alien Enemies Act needs to fucking die for that reason too.
Right.
But
But
so
like,
moving, like, think about it. Just break this down. Separate out from your brain the idea that it's an immigrant versus a non-immigrant, right? If I move from St. Petersburg, Florida, to Atlanta, Georgia, I have not harmed the city of Atlanta at all. Right?
No, you've merely made its local economy slightly bigger.
Right. That's all I've done. Is I've made the economy of one place slightly smaller, another economy of another place slightly larger, by my shift in position. That is all that I have done. That there's no moral or ethical or logical difference between me moving from state to state and an immigrant moving from Venezuela to the United States.
Right.
There's no logical difference.
I have asked a number of people over the years to explain to me why they believe it should be more difficult to move from nation to nation than state to state internally. And I have yet to be given a single compelling argument.
The most compelling ones that I get, you go ahead and give yours, but I've got
the
one.
The closest that I've personally been given is, I still think, an incredibly bad argument.
Yep.
And that was the idea that, well, you as an American citizen, under U.S. law,
right,
are not allowed to go to somewhere where the age of consent is like 14 and have sex with a 14-year-old and get away with it.
Sure,
you can still be prosecuted as a U.S. citizen by the U.S. government for doing that.
Okay.
I don't know that that's a good enough reason to have our entire immigration framework exist to prevent.
No,
there are other ways,
really, because it's.
There are other ways you can prevent that behavior.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, that's an inversion of how it operates. Where the rest of the world still has its. All countries have bad immigration policies. Don't get me wrong, right?
Europe has some atrocious ones.
Yeah, but more countries will take more Americans than the inverse, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
We do not have a hard time. We did not historically have a hard time moving anywhere,
because a lot of us have a value add position. Like, we can go teach English to kids someplace because English is still like the global business language. We were always,
especially if you were any kind of college graduate, you were considered to have like a good education compared to anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So, we've had these advantages, but that's kind of an inversion of how it usually works, where it's more like people coming here rather than us going out to do fucking sex trafficking in the rest of the world. Now it happens, but putting that aside, second is that how would I put it? You could just renounce your U.S. citizenship if you're moving to another place.
Yeah.
To do that.
It costs like $2,500, but you can do it.
Yeah. Like, if you really want to go off to bang teenagers in Thailand, it is not hard.
You're just going to have to stay in Thailand and become a citizen there.
And I'm actually not even sure that the federal government would ever prosecute somebody who moved to another country and lived there as an expat and was sleeping with somebody that was within their legal age.
No, I mean,
you wouldn't be extradited
the only people who ever get into trouble for that are people who are doing it as a sex tourism thing, where they're flying over, doing their thing, and then coming back.
Right, and it's usually more of the trafficking end, not the actual.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I know people can theoretically be prosecuted for that. I could not begin to tell you how many people are. I would imagine it's vanishingly low.
Yeah. I mean, finding the evidence, getting, again, a country to, provide, support for the prosecution when it would be outside of their,
it's
your
not
lawyer, if you get you'd have to have a lawyer that deals with international cases, and then their lawyer would be able to get evidence suppressed in the other country because it isn't illegal
It's not like there's a country out there whose entire economy is based around underage sex tourism.
Yeah.
There are valid reasons to go to any country that aren't that. So the burden of proof would be exceptional. Unless you did something like film yourself there and then bring it back.
Yeah, there's a small handful of places where it's well known that it's a big thing, like Thailand, right? But even then,
it's not as prevalent as we make it out to be.
Right. And also, they have lots of legal non-child sex tourism that you can do in Thailand. The love houses, apparently, those are a big thing, but, they're adult women, so.
Yeah.
shut up.
but that's the closest thing to a compelling argument I've been given, and I was like able to just dismiss that outright.
The most compelling one I get, and it's one of those things that's kind of at the core of like ideological nationalism, right?
Okay.
Which is that a nation, okay, and I don't agree with this, but this is where they get it. Like, a nation is more than just a place, right?
Okay.
It is a combination of its culture and its people, right? And that it becomes a thing. And it's, very similar to like, guys like Mershimer and their great state theory and all of that jazz, right? Like the way that geopolitics operates nation states and gives them kind of like a sense of agency, right? Nationalism and nationalists have this argument that a nation is a composition of its laws, its culture, its language, and its people.
Okay.
Right? And that then as an entity, a nation, right, has an agency to it. And it has a right to keep itself, protect itself, remain a composite of its nation, of its people or whatever. I don't agree with it. I think it's a silly idea. I think it ascribes way too much like basically whoever controls the levers of like cultural power at any given moment
gets to decide.
And also they don't control the levers of cultural power. Like pro-immigration, like kind to immigrants, pro-melting pot kind of liberal ideology in the U.S. outweighs and outnumbers the super anti-immigrant, deport them all, racist, nationalist worldview. It's just that the nationalists control the political levers of power, not the social ones.
I could see someone in a European country that had hundreds upon hundreds upon hundred years of like its own individual culture being able to try to make that argument.
Sure. It's still a bad one, but yeah.
It's a bad one, but like it is impossible to even attempt to make an argument like that about the United States when we are a nation built entirely of nothing but colonizers and immigrants.
Yep. Colonizers, then immigrants.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's everybody.
And it's really only going back
it's why every single American, one of the first phrases they hear is melting pot.
Yeah. I mean, there's like one guy alive that he's like the great grandson of Adams or the grandson of Adams. Like it's like 3 or 4 generations. It's basically like the men in their family didn't have a son, had a son at like 50 to 70, right? So it's like there's one guy alive.
He just keeps it. This family just keeps having kids in their like elder years.
Right. So one of the
babies at 70 over and over again.
Yeah. So so it's like he's like the grandson or great grandson of John Quincy Adams or John Adams, right? So that means that like from the Revolution onward, the United States has existed the lifespan of like 4 guys.
Yeah.
Right. That's 4 guys.
We have yet to celebrate our 250th birthday. Starting from our Declaration of Independence,
right?
Not from the actual like ratification of the Constitution and the formal creation of what we now call the United States of America. Because that was 10 years later.
Yeah, like we're 5 to 6 generations out from the Civil War, roughly. Right, but 2 for like people who live to be like 80, 90.
Yeah, the Civil War was 120 years ago. 160, maybe 75.
160 years.
160 years.
Yeah. So 2-3 long-lived people.
Yeah.
Right. Like boom. The Revolution was 80. It was 4 score and 7 years earlier. So
if I recall, there is one like 90-year-old woman out there who is still receiving a Civil War pension because she married a Civil War veteran who was 90 when she was like 12, and then he fucking died, and she's been getting his pension ever since, and she's like 90 now, if I recall correctly. Which is we are a very young country, and it is very difficult to appreciate how young we are compared to every other country every other culture in the rest of the world. I shouldn't say that because nations as we know them are still relatively new too. Most of the countries that you see in Europe were not recognizable as the same countries 100 years ago. The borders were different.
Yeah.
You had monarchies and empires, and the countries weren't countries until after World War I.
Reshaped most of it, and World War II finished the job.
Yeah.
And then the fall of the Soviet Union,
like,
rejiggered the whole goddamn map.
The Ottoman Empire didn't collapse until like 1918, 1919.
That was the end, basically the end of World War I.
You know, you look at the start of World War I. You had the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right there in the middle of fucking Europe. That constitutes like 5 different countries now.
Yeah. So, you know, nationalism is a idea that first came into existence at the end of the 19th century, right?
It's new.
And it's brand new. So come on, knock it off. So the logical arguments are bad as far as that goes, like the moral arguments. Now, then there are the economics of it. Open borders. Like, if the United States, because again, people make the argument, well, the rest of the world, but who cares? Fuck, whatever.
We can't control
But what we can do is be an example, because if we started to allow open borders trade with ourselves and other nations, and we got a much more lax immigration system, other countries would start to follow suit, especially when their economies took a shit.
And
like Europe, yes, let's just say
the greatest irony is that it would largely mean going back to the immigration systems we've had in the past.
Yeah.
Our historic immigration systems where you would show up, and after 5 years, if you were still here, they're like, are you leaving?
Right.
No. Okay, you're American now.
Like, here's the thing: I can get behind some conceptual minor immigration restrictions, like an Ellis Island style. You show up, you present papers,
you register.
We register, so we know
register
who you
your
are.
Intent.
Yeah, register your intent. We know who you are. We give you a quick physical to make sure you're not, carrying any dangerous diseases.
You don't have the consumption.
You don't have the consumption. And then we give you medical treatment for anything that's treatable. And that way you don't spread
at most maybe a 2-week quarantine for health reasons. But even then, in a modern global economy where we've got tourists coming in from around the globe, we don't put them in quarantine for 2 weeks when they land.
We don't need it. It's not necessary. Exactly. But we could have that basic, you want to come in, we check, make sure you're healthy, cool.
Yeah,
you got all your vaccinations, cool. Great. All right. Welcome aboard. Now we have a couple quick questions, like minor restrictions. When I say minor restrictions, all right, do you have X number of dollars, right, to make sure that you can find housing and care for yourself, right, while you're here? No. All right. Yes. No. Yes. Cool. Welcome aboard. No. Okay. You don't. No. I wouldn't set it at a high number. It'd be 3 months expenses, 6 months expenses, right?
Which, if you're going to move from one part of the world to another,
yep.
Especially when you don't have to worry about doing it as some sort of desperate refugee trying to walk across 3,000 miles of Latin America.
Exactly. Now, we're still going to have that problem, the desperate people. How do we handle that? Really simple, right? Question 2, right, should be, now, 1, if people aren't paying coyotes, they may actually be able to have that money. Because a lot of coyotes take way more than that, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got $5-6 grand, set aside, right? Rather than giving that to a coyote and having nothing when you get here, the U.S. could just let you in. But option 2 is, do you have family or a sponsoring organization, right, that are going to put you up for the next 3 to 6 months, right?
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. You're in, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a potential job lined up? Farming, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason, we could go back to a system where...
Check any of those boxes off and you're in. That's easy.
For decades, we had a system where, every harvesting season, you would have migrants come across the border, work the fields during harvest, go back to wherever they came from with whatever money they made.
We should be allowed to let them stay.
Yeah. They probably won't stay farm workers, but there'll be more farm workers.
Yeah.
And having that sort of open borders thing, I think, would probably make us more responsive. Like we're talking about health concerns. We would become more responsive to health concerns overseas because we would see them as a potential problem for us in a way that we wouldn't otherwise when you have really strict draconian border policy.
But so we have we have a population decline problem. Our population is not keeping up pace with what we need in order for
And
our
we're
economy to
just
stay.
below replacement rate.
So we're just below replacement rate. So I mean, we could fill that gap. We need more laborers in a lot of what we would consider traditionally low wage areas,
Right.
Which, you know, a lot of immigrants are willing to fill. We
But then
would have
being
a big boost to GDP.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
and
The tax benefits would be massive.
One of the things you forget about is like one of the things that would inherently happen if people were able to cross the border just to work for the season and then return home, like, and they didn't have to worry about running from ICE the entire time. They would inherently have better working conditions because their bosses, wherever they're working, whatever farm or whatever factory, whatever construction site, wouldn't be able to hold that over them.
Yeah.
As like a sword of Damocles. It's like, I will report you and you will go back and nothing will happen to me for hiring you in the first place.
Yeah, because like the fines for hiring them are not as high as like they keep trying to penalize this stuff. And again, I don't want to penalize either side of it. I just want to end the exploitation. Right. And if you bring them out of the shadows and into the light, they can't be as easily exploited. They have rights. They can negotiate for their wages.
It's the exact same thing as when they obliterated sites like Backpage for sex workers and escorts to like advertise personally, determine their own rates, vet their clientele amongst themselves so that people who should not be clients of sex workers are weeded out and not allowed to be anyone's client anymore. And that was all shut down with SESTA and FOSTA in the guise of protecting the children, and all we ended up doing was making sex work more dangerous for people who didn't have any other options.
Almost every form of prohibition fails, and there's a reason for it. Now, there are a few rare cases where it doesn't, like CFCs in the environment, right? You can regulate away a dangerous chemical or component from manufacturing and industry. That's easy.
Yeah,
right?
and that's the sort of thing where you're regulating an industry. You're not trying to regulate people's personal individual lives, daily lives.
You can regulate out toxic substances from food and water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You can do that stuff. That's easy. You cannot prohibit things where there's a market for, that people have a demand, right?
Yeah.
And expect it to actually function. All you do is create black markets.
Right.
You create crime. You create conditions where those crimes get violent. You create conditions where people get exploited. You create conditions where people utilize power and force and violence to protect their profits, protect their interests, and hold the people they're exploiting under bondage, right?
Yeah.
All of those things are direct results of any form of prohibition.
And we have
be it drugs, be it alcohol, be it people.
And, you know, if
Sex work.
Look at drugs. You do away with drug prohibition. You have a system set up where drugs are decriminalized. Anybody can purchase whatever drug they want. One thing that will immediately happen is when you go to buy drugs, you will know what drugs you were buying, and you won't have to worry about them being 90% fentanyl by mistake.
Yeah. And crime comes from prohibition, not the other way around. Like, that's because there's a need.
And
there is a market demand for the people. Like, these people are going to flee the countries that they're fleeing.
Right.
And people here are going to demand cheap groceries, right? And between those two things, there's going to be a demand. Right? People fleeing where they're fleeing, us demanding cheap groceries equals illegal migrants coming to the United States.
Yeah, a black market for human beings.
Yes.
And that's and one of the frustrating things about prohibition, not getting really off topic, but we're a tiny bit off topic. One of the frustrating things about prohibition is that we almost exclusively use prohibition to circumscribe like normal human behavior.
Yes.
Like our normal things that we just do as human beings, those are the things that we try to impose prohibition on.
And in this particular case, it's the right of human migration to seek safety, shelter, comfort, right?
And a better life. Because that's the thing, you can... Yes, there's a lot of exploitative practices, especially like in the farm industry. By and large, they are... People who are coming here to do that work are still
having a better life
life than they would have
wherever
they came from.
Like, again, we can we can have a problem with the exploitation of the system, right? Because all exploitation, bad. But don't make it about that as your argument against it, because fuck you.
What you don't want to do is make the system more exploitative by trying to do things to take down the system that will not work.
Exactly. And the big fuck you to that is that the inverse is also true, that where they're coming from is more dangerous, more exploitive. There is a reason that they are coming here.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to tell me we can't bring them to the United States, they can't come here because the work that they'll be doing is exploitive and there's a black market for human labor, and that's bad. So send them back to Venezuela or El Salvador, right? Or Nicaragua, where they will face like death squads or gang violence or poverty or brutal working conditions that are worse than the United States. Fuck you.
People
are not really interested in their well-being.
People do not travel 1,500 miles on foot because they expect to have a worse life.
Yep. Now, other arguments for it, of course. Immigrants don't drain jobs. They don't steal jobs. They create them.
No.
Right? They have done more to create jobs. And in the last like 40 years, the Mexican immigrants have been the most successful group of immigrants in the history of the United States. Right? They have done more on an individual basis and as a cohort to thrive, right, than the Irish ever did, than the Germans ever did, right, than the Polish, than the Italians.
So literally all of my ancestors, you just named them all.
I just named them all.
You named them all.
No other group of immigrants in the United States has done more as a cohort to create more jobs, more businesses, right, and go from poverty to middle class and upper middle class lifestyles. And like they assimilate faster,
and they're like, and on the other side, they have a nice culture that they share with us.
Yeah, and the food is great.
Like, we benefit from Mexican migrants coming here and giving us a little bit of their Mexican lives to us. Like we get to experience, our lives are better because we get to experience those aspects of their culture here.
If you have never sat outside on a hot day and had a Modelo and a tamale, I do not envy you. If you've never been to a quinceañera, I don't envy you. I have had some of the best fucking food I've ever had from South and Central America. Like, get over it. They bring culture.
And it's a good culture.
Yeah, they pay taxes. They don't drain the government coffers. They don't use
$96 billion a year.
Yeah.
In tax revenue that undocumented migrants pay into the system that they will never be able to receive services from.
Yeah. In 2016 alone, immigrants contributed $2 trillion to U.S. GDP. And 2 years later, economists tabulated that immigrants added over $450 billion to state, local, and federal taxes in 2018. That's...
Yeah. And let's be perfectly fucking clear here. This is... I would not be sitting here doing this if it were not for immigration.
No.
You would not be sitting here doing this if it were not for immigration. The fact that we are white should not make the difference.
Yeah. One, we wouldn't be doing this because our families wouldn't have been in here. Like, obviously.
No.
Clearly.
They'd still be in... I wouldn't exist if there weren't this country to allow for some Italians, some Poles, some Germans, and some Irish people to like commingle in a way that they would breed with one another over multiple generations.
We're European fucking Heinz 57 babies.
Yeah.
Like in just 6 generations of the United States, like all of those nationalities pooled together. Like, you didn't get much of that in Europe unless you were rich. Yeah. Right? You had to be like rich or like again traveling for work sometimes.
Right, and then you were probably aristocracy and marrying a cousin.
But so you didn't get a ton of like intermingling in Europe except, in rare occasions. But here you get that on top of it. On top of that,
it's really,
if not for immigrants, it's doing all that hard work.
It's really easy to forget that it's only within the last 100 years that the people you were going to spend your entire life interacting with weren't the same group of people in the same 50-mile radius from where you were born.
And think about the other reason why we're doing this, if and only immigration allowed for it, right? We're one, utilizing the internet. And all these technological advances that H-1B visas allowed for. Right?
We have imported some of the smartest motherfuckers to ever walk the face of the earth to our country to work our tech jobs for us and innovate for us.
Yep. And they're working over at YouTube, where we post this, right? And so,
they're working at chip manufacturers designing the next generation of computer chips for Apple and AMD and I guess Intel's still a thing.
But they do a lot of programming and engineering work still to this day in the United States, and so our lives are made easier that way. And in the other way, like imagine if there weren't so many immigrants working in restaurants, and I'm even the legal ones, right? Like legal immigrants who are predominantly like Spanish speakers or English as a second language folks.
We see a lot of them all the time.
Who are working in construction and low wage trades and restaurant work, right? Now, all of those millions upon millions of jobs not being filled by immigrants. Well, I don't think there'd be a market for white kava bar owners or fucking or there wouldn't be, because we wouldn't have the space, we wouldn't have the economy for it. We would I as a high school only graduate would not have like lucked into corporate middle management, right? Yeah. And because there wouldn't have been the space for it. I'd have been stuck competing against everybody else in my same cohort for low wage jobs.
Yeah. And when you try to retroactively like really aggressively enforce immigration and you start pushing those people who have been filling those jobs out of the space to do that jobs, you end up in a situation like we're facing here in Florida, where the state's like, maybe 13-year-olds should be able to work overnight on school nights.
Yeah, we're rolling back child labor laws to keep immigrants out. Like they're forcing kids to work again. Well, not like, forcing, but allowing, but they're forcing the economic conditions based on racism, right? Like, keep out brown immigrants, okay? Create a situation where there's not enough people to fill jobs. Therefore, there's way too much pressure on wages. Therefore, wages don't go up. The econ is the econ. And it all connects. If you have a hard time understanding how one thing connects to another, I'm sorry. But that's how macro fucking econ works, right? Yeah. And you take one cohort out of the labor pool, right? A million immigrants, right? Those jobs have to be filled, which means that you're now competing against a smaller pool of people for more jobs.
It's okay for you as just an average person to not understand that, but you have to be willing to listen to the experts who do. And accept that what they're telling you is probably correct. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, which would have to be pretty compelling when it's like, when you have, especially in economists, where you have like far right and like full on Marxist economists agreeing on like a lot of basic principles. Yes, because it's just immutable fact.
And most of them are pro open borders and pro open trade.
Yeah,
like now
both ways.
In both ways. And there's a reason. Like, you know, you can have some minor trade restrictions to protect a specific industry from collapsing. You can have them to like balance things out so that your two countries can basically
you can have some kind of customs enforcement to keep out contraband that's legal in one country but illegal in another.
Sure.
That's fine.
It's all fine. And I mean, it's mostly about invasive species for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, you don't want invasive plant and animal species to just be running amok and destroying your local ecology.
Yeah, great. That stuff's fine. No problems with that.
That's reasonable.
But prohibition for prohibition's sake, bad. And we should be focusing on... We have a presidency right now that is focusing on the exact opposite of what is good for humanity.
Right.
Like, in the long term... And, like, at the end of the day, I will definitely ascribe myself as a globalist. I want a world where I want it to be as easy for me to pack up and live in Italy or Brazil or Norway as it is for me to move to New York
Yeah.
or California,
And I
want them to have that same.
I want
power.
I want that for everybody. It's not just I want it for me. It's
Yeah.
like that should be the standard for all humanity.
Exactly, but because I want it for me too,
Right.
As a principle, anything that I think that I should want for myself, I should want for other people.
Like-
right, and
Why shouldn't somebody who lives in the Democratic Republic of Congo and they're faced with the prospect of like I can either like work in a cobalt mine,
right,
which sucks,
yeah, oh, it's awful.
and the working conditions are terrible, and my government's not protecting me at all.
Or they could work in a meatpacking plant here in the U.S.
Yeah, I could just fuck off somewhere else and like have a better job and have a better life. And yeah, there'd be struggles. I'd have to learn the language enough to get by because I probably won't have a community of enough of my native speakers to rely on them.
But man, you know what you get when you get a bunch of open immigration, especially here in the U.S. It's been fantastic. You get cool neighborhoods.
Yes.
Right? You get cool ethnic neighborhoods, and I love them. I love them of all ethnic stripes. Haitian neighborhoods, Dominican neighborhoods, Mexican neighborhoods, Guatemalan neighborhoods, Chinatowns and Little Italies and
little Somali neighborhoods,
neighborhoods
with the best food you will ever eat in your entire fucking life.
like, oh my God, if Ethiopian food, by the way, is amazing. Somali
Ethiopian
food
food.
is almost identical, but has some minor differences.
Ethiopia,
they're both fucking great.
if you've never had,
Kitfo. Oh no,
you could
eat kitfo.
go to the worst Ethiopian restaurant in the United States of America, and you will still have an exceptional meal.
Yeah, it'll
Still be the worst Ethiopian food in the United States of America, but it will still be an exceptional meal.
It will be better than many other foods. It is great.
And the fact that like basically everything but the kitfo's vegan.
Right? I mean, think about it this way, right? The United States, we have hamburgers, hot dogs, some types of pie, right? Roast turkey,
and
like fried chicken,
and they're
like
all variations of immigrant dishes.
yeah.
The closest thing to like a truly American food is probably the hamburger.
The hamburger, even though it's named after, it was a German immigrant who made it, but it's
But it wasn't based on a German food that he brought with him. It was him doing his own thing here.
Yeah. And he named it after the town he was from.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. But yeah, like the hamburger, the roast turkey.
You know,
the roast turkey is probably the most uniquely American thing also, right?
Apple pie, because we had apples in North America and they weren't everywhere else.
Yep. And yeah, turkey doesn't exist in most of the world. But yeah, that's about it, guys.
Yeah.
Mashed potatoes, because again, potatoes are native to the New World. The type of potato that we use for mashing, like the Idaho russet, etc., right, is like basically native to North America only. So yeah, mashed fucking potatoes.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. Thanksgiving dinner is like the most uniquely American.
Our spider-infested cranberry patches.
Yeah.
You know the story about the spiders, right?
What about them?
Well, when they flood the
the ones that
the wolf spiders live in the cranberry patches and they eat the bugs that eat the cranberries.
Yeah.
But then when they flood the cranberry patches and they go out to harvest them and all the cranberries, those spiders are still in there and they like crawl up on all the people who go in to harvest the.
That's horrific.
They're just covered
I've
in
seen
wolf
a cranberry
spiders.
harvest area over in Door County,
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
they just because the spiders climb. You're the tallest thing there. You're harvesting the cranberries with your fucking little rake that you're raking them off the top of the water, and they're just like skittering. They skitter on you.
I'm gonna nope on that.
Wolf spiders are big too.
Yeah, they are.
They're big and they are hairy, and they are what you think of. They are what you think of when you are afraid of a spider that's not a tarantula.
Yeah.
Like if you're afraid of spiders, wolf spiders are what you're thinking of.
They're not really aggressive, but
no, and like they're gonna crawl all over you in the cranberry patch. They're not gonna bite you. They're not gonna do anything. They just want to not be wet.
But I really no. I'm gonna still nope the fuck on that one. Like that's, but you know, we get. Think about it. Like it amazes me how many people are have this like racist nativist keep all the immigrants fucking idea out, because it's like you get our food and our culture is so intermixed and intermingled with everything else. And like Texas chili with Texas is like chili's ours. It's like like except that it was like some Mexican ladies like started making it first on the border, right? Like,
but you know, the chimichanga was invented here. Yeah. Somebody got the idea to deep fry traditional Mexican food.
Yep. You know what's an interesting one that I learned about? Carbonara.
Carbonara?
Yeah, do you know the history of that one?
No. I know a lot of what we call Italian food
It's American.
is Italian-American and was developed here, like...
But carbonara, interestingly, was developed in Italy in part by Americans, in part by Italians, using American ingredients.
Well, I mean, the tomato is from the New World.
Yeah. Well, carbonara doesn't have tomato.
What I'm saying, but like,
Yes.
Italian food in general, like...
Yeah. Now, mind you, again, a lot of the world had like food was kind of garbage throughout most of Europe until colonialism. Like,
There's not a lot of spices grow in Europe.
Yeah,
well,
not a
there's
lot
a
of
lot of
spices.
savory things,
Right.
But not like spices.
And so, like, there was a lot of garbage food in Europe until they started colonialism, and then they learned that they could have tomatoes and potatoes.
Yeah,
and,
like, just think about the fact that it wasn't until the 15th century that Europeans learned what the potato is.
Right.
And how ubiquitous it is in all European cuisine now.
yes, like
Everywhere. Ireland, England,
I just
Germany.
had pierogies yesterday.
Yeah.
Right.
Poland, Italy. Like,
Yes. I had potato-filled pierogies yesterday.
none of those foods existed before the 15th century.
Yep.
16th, really, because it was the end of the 15th century when we even discovered them.
And tomatoes are big in Italian dishes now.
Yeah.
And yet it's not. They did not exist in Europe.
No.
Until the 16th century. It's amazing. So, but no, carbonara, and the history behind that is actually it's because of World War II.
Okay.
As American GIs were, like they'd go, they'd take a town, and they'd basically the people they'd work with people, and people would make food and shit, right? So the locals didn't have a lot of supplies for food, right?
It's fair.
But the American GIs kept getting flour and butter and bacon sent to them, right? And because they had plenty of that in the U.S. supply lines, because wars are won by supply lines. It's a little known,
that's why Russia hasn't taken Ukraine yet.
And the U.S. has been very good at building supply lines throughout our warfare.
We're very good at holding land once we take it.
And so as we were going, they had plenty of butter and bacon and flour, and local families were like, well,
We can figure out something to do with this.
and carbonara was born. And eggs. Oh, yeah, we sent lots of eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and carbonara was born. It's amazing.
But that's what
cultural exchange is good. That's what I'm saying about that.
Right.
Like, it's a
what
war story.
What do we call Chinese food in the United States? Bears almost no resemblance to anything anybody in China eats.
Yeah.
But it was developed by Chinese Americans using what they had available here and taking their culinary techniques and applying them to the ingredients that they get locally.
Yeah, there's a couple of soups and noodles and dishes that are the same, but otherwise the rest of it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
And it's delicious.
But Japanese food is fairly traditional still.
Right.
There's some variation, some Americanization, but like a lot of Japanese restaurants.
We didn't have waves of Japanese immigration like we had waves of Chinese immigration.
Yeah. So the food stayed traditionalized. But you got all of these cultural exchanges that are really good for us. And so with that as the backdrop, that's all of the goods of immigration. And now we've got the good of due process, which, let's face it, is the other problem with this administration.
There is nothing that I have been arguing with people more consistently over the last 3 weeks than who deserves due process. And just people refusing to acknowledge that if everybody does not have due process, no one has due process. Now, one of the problems is, one, I feel like a huge number of them don't know what due process means when I say it. When I say due process, they don't know what I'm talking about, and they don't want to listen to me when I explain it. Literally, all due process means, in case you don't know, is that you get to, defend yourself against any sort of accusation formally in a court or in front of some formal body. You get to say, "This, you're accusing me of this. This is my response to your accusation." That's it.
It is literally that there is a system or a process in place that determines step by step what the state can do to an individual and what that individual's rights are in response.
And
it is allowing everyone accused of a crime or that the state is taking action against, be it civilly or criminally, right? And immigration
To
is a civil
state
matter,
their case,
To state
why
their
that
case.
should not be happening
And an
to them.
opportunity to defend themselves or to stop the state from doing it. That's it.
And
that's, if you deny that to anyone, you can deny it to everyone because it is easy to.
I have had many arguments with people who are like, well, it's only for citizens. But if you are denying due process to people who are not citizens, how do you determine who is a citizen without some sort of process to determine that? If you are denied due process, if I'm picked up off the street by ICE, like if they break my window and they pull me out of my car and they throw me in a fucking van, if they never bother to give me a chance to say I'm a citizen, what does it matter that I'm a citizen?
Right.
It
and even
doesn't.
if you do, like, I'm a citizen, shut up, get in the van.
If I don't have an opportunity to formally present proof of that,
What proof of citizenship do you carry around? Like, I don't carry my passport around.
I know where my birth certificate is, but I don't carry it with me because I don't want it destroyed by being on my person all the time.
Yep. And so
it's locked away in a fireproof box.
And your ID doesn't give you your citizenship proof. And
No.
I mean, and again, they could just ignore it. They could refuse to look at it. They even if you could only have a driver's license if you were a citizen, which I know a lot of you assholes want.
There is no reason why ICE couldn't pick you up, look at your photo ID, and say this is a good fake.
Yep.
And then throw it away. They can do that.
They can.
If no one has if anyone is denied due process, they can do that to anyone they choose for whatever reason they choose.
And now, our legal system has a ton of other problems when it comes to immigration. Immigrants are often denied access to their attorneys, denied phone calls, denied an opportunity to have a hearing or bail. They are not allowed visitors. Like they are treated like. They are treated as if they've committed the most horrific crimes imaginable, and all that more than 90% of the people that the U.S. government ever rounds up, are more than 90% have no criminal history.
Yeah, these are people who mostly overstay legal visas.
Yeah, so
that expire, and that's a civil offense, not a criminal one.
They have not committed a crime.
It's not a crime; it is a civil infraction.
And
it's no different than going 10 miles over the speed limit. You're not going to be thrown in prison for that. You're going to be fined.
Yep.
Because it's a civil crime. That's.
Did you hear? Okay, so speaking of just the system that we have, because even when people get due process, our immigration system is a garbage mess. And I know lots of people don't understand it. They always make these arguments. They should do it the right way, the legal way. But always and forever, I keep hearing you guys then not want the legal way done either.
Right.
One. Two, make excuses for the system that we have, which is horrendous.
I would respect that contingent of people so much more if they were just honest and would say, I don't want any immigration of any kind, and white people don't count as Americans. Like, if they would just say those two things openly.
As immigrants.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, well, only white people count as Americans.
Okay.
Like, if they would just openly admit those two things, that one, they do not want any kind of immigration from anywhere at any time, and that only white people can count as true Americans. If they would say those two things, I would hate them, but I would at least respect their intellectual consistency.
Yeah. At least be logically consistent. Because our immigration system is monstrous. It's a mess. It takes years to get a green card, to get citizenship, to get your hearings.
And it being a monstrous mess just encourages coming in an undocumented way.
Yeah. Because again, we're the richest country on the planet, or we might not be by the end of this presidency, but as of right now, we are.
We might not be by the end of spring.
And the cost of that is always going to be people wanting to come here for a better life. Mm-hmm. We set ourselves up as that shining city on a hill, right? Like, that the rest of the world aspired to be. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
You sell yourself as the land of freedom and opportunity. And people are going to come here for freedom and opportunity.
You can't tell the whole world anybody can come here, and if they just work hard enough and pull themselves out of their bootstraps, they can be whatever they want to be. They can fulfill all their dreams. You can't tell people that and then be surprised when people show up to do it.
Yeah.
And you can't then make it. essentially impossible to do if you're not already successful where you're coming from.
Exactly.
If you are not immigrating to the United States as someone who was wealthy in your home country, it is almost an impossible process to navigate at this point.
It is. And again, it should be unconscionable.
And
borders kill. People you are forcing back. And now, like, when we got rid of open borders, that allowed tens of thousands of Jews to be sent back to be executed by Germany. Right.
Boatload after boatload after boatload.
That we sent back.
And we said, yeah, nah, go home.
And they were murdered. There are people still drowning in the rivers trying to get across in Texas.
Yeah.
There are people who are subject to predation. They die in ice raids or out in the desert. There are
desperate people overcrowding small, unseaworthy boats in Haiti to try to make it to Florida.
People smuggled in shipping containers and running out of air. All of these things happen.
Have you seen season 2 of The Wire?
Right. But all of these things fucking happen. And it is unconscionable that we allow it to happen. It's immoral and it is ridiculous. And it is time that we stand up to it. And it's getting worse because our administration right now is now shifting gears to making arguments like they can deport people strictly for viewpoints.
Yeah.
Right? There are several people, not just one, but that's when we got into that whole student data thing. They're trying to target anybody who is critical of Israel. They've denied bail to a girl, a woman who has committed no crime, and the only reason for her deportation that they're trying to deport her for is because she made a post saying that her school should divest from Israel.
Right. Let's think about this for a minute. We are basing our immigration policy into the United States on people's opinions of a third-party government that's not ours.
Yeah.
We're not even targeting people who are talking shit about the U.S.
Right.
We're going after people who are criticizing a foreign government that's not us. We are doing it in ways that we would not do this to people for criticizing our government.
No.
We understand. I think Americans in general, because so many of us do it, understand that you have a right to criticize the U.S. government. Or at least we used to.
These assholes that say this shit, they say things like use your free speech in your home country.
Yeah.
Right? So no, they don't want they don't like it, leave fuckers. You are the least American among us. You are the most un-American, anti-freedom, anti-liberty pieces of shit.
They are not just
on the face of the planet.
Un-American, they are anti-American and anti-Constitution.
Yes.
They're not
claim to be otherwise. It's a lie.
All of you fucking Second Amendment, I need my firearms to protect me from government tyranny. I don't see you doing a goddamn thing about anything right now except voting for it.
Yeah.
So what tyranny are you protecting yourself from? Are you just protecting yourself from the fact that brown people exist? Because it feels like you just want to protect yourself from the fact that brown people exist. Well, guess what? That's not going to change. There are more brown people than non-brown people on the face of the planet by a lot.
And the current administration looks like it wants to put in a red flag law that would actually take your guns away.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Here's something I'm going to say. I will make this fucking prediction right goddamn now. When the day comes that Donald Trump tells Pam Bondi that for whatever reason he conjures up in his mind, it is vitally important that the United States populace be disarmed and has their firearms taken away from them, whether that is by force or through very lucrative buyback programs that are voluntary. MAGA will be the first in line to give up every single goddamn one of their firearms because Donald Trump told them to. And I know I'm right because every time I make a prediction like this and they tell me, no, you're wrong, we would never do that, they fucking cross the line anyway. They did the same goddamn thing when I said you people will be okay with the idea of the United States government deporting U.S. natural-born citizens. You told me there's no way we would ever support that. As soon as Pam Bondi and Donald Trump and Carolyn Levitt start floating the idea of finding a way to legally deport natural-born American, homegrown citizens, you motherfuckers are completely on board because you have no fucking principles beyond doing what goddamn daddy tells you to, because you're a bunch of fucking cucks.
Yeah, you are a bunch of fucking losers, and it's sad. But I want to see how that one plays out, because I bet you're right. I bet at least some of them. I bet a bunch of his diehards would find a way to be like, well,
Father told me.
He's making the country safer. We are not going to need him anymore.
The
country, we will never need to revolt against this nation. We do not need to protect ourselves. We got nothing to hide.
The people who won't are whatever percentage of the 77 million people who voted for him weren't committed MAGA, but like MAGA, hardcore committed cult member MAGA. They will a single weekend and they'll all have not a goddamn one of them own a single fucking firearm.
I want to see this now. All right, Donald Trump, do the funniest thing ever.
Do the funniest thing ever. Hey, when you declare martial law, you can't have. It's antithetical to the military being able to maintain order to have a heavily armed populace. Obviously, you're going to have to disarm them, because what if some of those people who have guns are secretly radical left Democrats?
Right.
Marxist Democrats with guns.
I gotta go boating more often. I gotta go out on a boat more often, because every once in a while, guns just fall off.
Yeah.
And they sink into the water, and I want to go see if I can find some of those lost guns out there. But I always bring my guns with me on the boat. I accidentally lost one once off the side of a boat. Just gone. And if they start trying to disarm us,
and I'll say this is
it'd be funny. I'm saying.
I know that none of the people who should heed this warning will believe me when I say it. There are a lot of people, Democrats, progressives, liberals, centrists, who would have never previously considered purchasing a firearm for self-defense, are going out and buying firearms for self-defense in numbers you can't begin to comprehend. Yeah. And I know you won't listen to me when I say that, and I know you won't believe me when I say that, because you'll be like, fucking libcucks, too scared of guns. You are going to find out how wrong you are in the hardest way possible.
Yeah. That's about all I can say to that one. I personally, I personally took about 6 people to learn how to shoot their first firearm after they bought one, right? Went to the range with them and walked them through some steps and just gun safety, etc. When they did, not a one of those 6 before then ever bought a firearm. They were inspired by current events and by his first term. And right?
Here's the thing.
And so
here's the thing about firearms.
Worse, here's the thing about more of us are doing it.
Here's the thing about guns. If you find yourself in a really dangerous situation where something like deadly force might become reasonable,
right?
You don't even have to be a good shot to just fire off rounds and get a motherfucker to go away.
Yeah, no.
You don't have to hit anybody at all. Also, for a firearm to be useful.
If it isn't relatively close range, you don't even need to be a good shot. You'll probably hit them.
Yeah.
You're aiming in the general direction.
Yeah.
As
somebody's less than 15, 20 yards away.
Yeah.
Probably gonna hit him.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Won't
be a kill shot probably if you're not good.
Or because you don't know.
But
it could not.
You might accidentally go full RoboCop and shoot a motherfucker in the dick.
Yeah.
And that's hilarious.
But there's a reason that lots of kids die from accidental shootings, right? It's not because kids are great shots who accidentally shoot their fucking friends.
Because close range is close range.
Right. And most incidents in which a firearm would be useful are within 5 meters.
Yeah.
So most incidents where you would be at risk of needing to use deadly force.
When you reach the point where you're like, oh shit, this is, I should do this.
Right.
You're already pretty close to someone.
Yeah. You're not usually afraid of, unless they are pulling out guns across a street. Yeah. Right. But you're usually being robbed at close range, or the person is threatening you at close range, or you're being actually attacked. Right. So they're usually within 5 meters of you most of the time. You don't need to be a good shot. But as long as you've gone to the range a few times, you'll probably hit and kill them.
Yeah, and as long as...
Good luck to you, MAGA.
Yeah. You are...
Because I'm doing my part.
You are going to find out in exactly the same way you are likely to find out why your stance on due process is wildly incorrect. The hardest way possible.
Yep.
You're going to find out the same way when it comes to like, oh, liberals and guns.
Oh, for sure.
And I know me saying this doesn't mean anything, and it's not going to change your opinion at all. And that's fucking beautiful, because it means I can just spout off all I want. And when the time comes for me to say I told you so, you'll be dead.
And on that note, is that a good place to wrap it up?
I think that might be a good place to wrap it up.
All
I
right.
think we've had a good episode this week.
Yeah, I think so.
It's been,
I feel good about this one.
I feel good. I feel like we've put a lot of positivity out into the world. I'm not even joking. Like,
I mean, I get what you're saying.
like,
yeah.
I think that we have like the most morally positive stance on something like immigration as you can have, because we are aggressively pro-immigration.
We are.
I want everyone to be able to immigrate anywhere they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason they want.
Like, look,
I think it's awesome.
I mean, I told you, like, my house in Minneapolis, my neighbors were El Salvadoran on one side and Guatemalan on the other, right? And I had that short fucking 5-foot high chain link fence, right?
Yeah.
And so their kids played with the dogs, and every time they had family gatherings, it was like almost every fucking weekend, they gave me food, right? Like, it's just, they'd had, like, and there'd be this old fucking abuela, she's like 80 years old, like yay high,
like 4'11".
Right? Yeah, she'd come up and give me a fucking plate, like it was like oh, they were so nice, right? And like I had a few Somalis that lived across the street, and it, like my neighborhood was so ethnically diverse because it was a
and hanging out with immigrants who come from less aggressively and pathologically individualistic societies will make you a better member of any community you find yourself a part of, because you'll understand what being community means.
Exactly. And now, like, I wasn't super close with any of my neighbors because obviously, they did their thing, I did mine and whatever, but I was friendly with them and they were nice and I knew them and I knew them well enough to go knock on the door and ask if I could get a favor, right? And they brought me food and I gave them things when I had fucking people over. I'd give them a hamburger, a brat, right? Like, it was just, you did that. You built community that way, and they were all great, and they were all human. And it's like, and if not for a system that allowed them to be here, I wouldn't have met these great people who were all human that deserved to live where I lived.
And again, going back to prohibition, our natural impulse is to like find community with the people around us. Yeah. Our immigration policy is a prohibition on that.
Yes, you're right. It's
all prohibition all the time, and all prohibition is bad. Period.
Yeah. Because, look, I don't want to continue to enforce this like dumb fucking 1950s, 1960s sitcom fucking family. Like that's what they're trying to enforce on us, right? A world.
It was mostly a lie at the time.
Yep. It's mostly a lie at the time. It's boring. Like, it's dull. It's homogenous and culturally devoid, right? Don't live in it. Live for real.
Be the best you that you can be every goddamn day of the goddamn week.
Hang out with immigrants. Fucking go out and party. Fucking go see a band. Live life. Eat ethnic foods. Travel the world.
Yeah,
build community with your neighbors, and don't try to have some Leave It to Beaver fucking fantasy. It doesn't work.
And it's boring.
Yeah.
Don't be boring.
Fuck boring.
Unless, honestly, you really want to be boring, in which case, I'm not going to tell you can't be boring. But
don't make the rest of us bored.
Yeah, don't take the rest of us down with you.
Yeah, you want to be boring, you do your own thing and leave us to fucking live. All right.
This is a good episode. I'm proud of this episode.
All right,
We've been unfocused the last few weeks. I feel like we're back.
We got a little bit of focus.
Baby.
Back in a new. What is it? I can't even remember the rest of the song.
I don't even know what song you're trying to sing.
That fucking Queen song is in my head now.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Anyway. Until next week, this has been The Grift.
I'm the Rev and Gonz.
I'm Gonzo.
Give us all your fucking money.
All of it.
All your money.